Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
How you
This
doing?
is it. What's going on, man? Good to see you.
10th episode.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
What are the odds?
Short of your regular crew. Am I in the
Yeah, you're in
Hall
the
of
elite.
Fame?
There's very few people that have had 10 episodes. It's a small handful, for sure.
I mean, that I should put that as the top thing on my CV. All the other stuff is bullshit. 10th time on Joe Rogan. Drop the mic.
This is how out of the corporate world I am. I don't even know what a CV is. I don't know what it stands for. I know people say it. I know what it means, but I don't know what it stands for.
Want me to tell you what an academic CV looks like?
Sure. What does it stand for? What is CV?
Curriculum vitae.
Ah, okay.
You basically, in academia, you'll start with your education, all your degrees, all of your positions that you've held. I was assistant professor here from here to there. Then all of your journal publications, all of your books, all of your conference art, and so on.
Right.
So it can end up being a pretty beefy CV. I think mine is about 47 pages long.
Oh, my goodness. Look at you accomplished
Speaking
academic.
of which.
And managed to stay logical. How did you do that? Oh, you got a new book.
Dropping on May 14th on happiness.
The Saad Truth, 2 A's about happiness.
Enjoy.
8 secrets for leading a good life.
Enjoy it.
All right, thanks,
how
sir.
have I been so productive?
How have you managed to? I mean, people have gotten annoyed at you, but you've somehow or another avoided like a full scale cancellation.
Well,
With your positions, it's kind of amazing.
it truly is. I'm kind of like the Velcro Don? The
Teflon.
Teflon Don.
Yeah, Velcro's the opposite.
That's right. right. Nothing sticks. They've tried to cancel me in all sorts of ways, but that speaks, by the way, to one of the powerful reasons why tenure, despite the fact that a lot of people despise the concept of tenure. Oh, it's just a bunch of lazy academics who are going to be deadwood for the next 30 years. But if I didn't have the protection of tenure, I'd be gone long ago. Now, that doesn't mean that I still haven't suffered many consequences, right? So I haven't gotten other jobs that I would have otherwise gotten because of how irreverent I am. The death threats. So for example, now after October 7th, it almost became impossible for me to go on campus because, first of all, I'm high profile. My university has a particular demographic reality. And so there are consequences to speaking out. But
So you can't go on campus, literally?
I mean, I have gone, but during the points when there were a lot of protests outside, the campus and so on, or on campus, because our campus is an urban campus, so it's hard to say where the school begins and where the city is.
Right.
You have death to Jews and free Palestine and Intifada and from the river to the sea, and there's 800 of them screaming, and you're going to come in. Many of them know who you are. They know that I'm not very supportive of their positions, and so it's going to be, a bit challenging. So on a few cases, I did it via Zoom. Other times, I had to have security with me, so I'd have to check into security, and they'd have to walk with me to class and so on. That's not a good thing. I'll tell you another quick story, if I may.
Please.
About what happened after October 7th. So I'll first talk about what happened in Lebanon. So the day that we escaped from Lebanon, for those of your viewers who don't know about us, we're Lebanese Jews. We were there until the start of the Civil War. We were there in the first year of the Civil War, and then we had to leave because it became impossible to be Jewish in Lebanon. When we left that day, it was from Beirut to Copenhagen to Montreal. As we cleared the airspace of Lebanon, the captain, I discussed this in chapter 1 of my previous book, The Parasitic Mind. He said, okay, we're now out of Lebanese airspace. And so my mother pulls out a pendulum with the Star of David, puts it around me, my neck, and says, now you can wear this, be proud and not hide your identity. Now, that's in the past, but now I'm going to link it to the current reality. About 3 weeks after October 7th, my wife and son came to pick me up from a cafe where I was working on my laptop. My wife had picked up my son, who was playing a soccer match in the east end of the city. And so as I got into the car, he says, Daddy, if you had come to where I was playing soccer today and you were wearing a Star of David, you'd be dead. So 1975, a Star of David is put around me, and now I can wear it proudly. 45 years later, I better not wear a Star of David in Montreal, Canada. That doesn't bode too well, Jack.
At a kid's soccer game.
Yeah, because the demographic reality in that neighborhood is such that a Star of David would be viewed as provocative incitement.
What's crazy to me is, regardless of how you feel about how the Israeli military and the army is pursuing the war in Gaza, regardless of that, the blatant, just out in the open anti-Semitism that we see today is like nothing I've ever seen before. Like roaches coming out of the woodwork. Like what? Like you see it all over social media, and it's like this. If this was September and not October, like if this is just, you would be shunned. Everybody would be like, "This is horrible. How the fuck could you say this? How are you? You're openly anti-Semitic. You're openly blaming the Jews for all the world's problems. Like, this is crazy. This is Nazi shit." And yet you're seeing it everywhere now. When those teachers were in front of Congress, when those principals of those universities were in front of Congress, and they were saying that it's not harassment to say death to the Jews unless it's actionable.
Yeah.
Which is the craziest mental, verbal gymnastics I have ever heard anyone say that's in that position, in a position of being the head of Harvard. It was so crazy to watch. It's so crazy to see. It's almost like we live in an alternative timeline. Like we entered into a new dimension. Like in our sleep, we woke up, but we're in a new place.
You know, nothing should surprise me given the history that I have growing up in the Middle East. But I was taken aback after October 7th at the Jew hatred that I was exposed to. Now, my positions are really not inflammatory. So, for example, I'll say things like, I'm worried about I have a lot of extended family in Israel, right? So after the October 7th happened, for me to just kind of call around to make sure that none of my cousins and their children and aunts and so on, no one was harmed, will take a while. Well, that itself, the fact that I cared about my family was incitement, I'm a Zionist, I'm a baby killer, right? I am personally responsible for the IDF killing any innocent children. But it's not just that, it's coming at you from all directions. So in the past, you could say, okay, Islamic sources are going to send you Jew hatred, and I'm used to that. You could say the neo-Nazi alt-right types, Jews will not replace us. They're coming after me. You've got, of course, the academic progressive left types who are also anti-Zionist, which is just code sweet word for anti-Jewish. And so everywhere you turn, there is Jew hatred, and it's so normalized. Now, of course, in part, it is emboldened by the fact that a lot of them are anonymous. They don't put their real names so that they can take the liberty to be this orgiastically, Jew hater. But it's so disenchanting to see that guy could be my gardener, he could be my surgeon, he could be my dentist. I don't know who he is, but there are millions of those folks who hold those beliefs. It's unbelievable.
I think a lot of them are fake as well. I think a lot of them are Russian and Chinese trolls. I think there's a disturbing amount of them that's responsible for taking this kind of discourse and pushing it to a much higher level and making it more ubiquitous. I really, really believe that. And there's a lot of data to support that. And I think that's part of what's going on with social media. It's definitely a big part of what's going on with Twitter and TikTok and a lot of these things where you see these very inflammatory messages that seem to be pushed. They're pushed through and promoted. And to the fact that you get them all the time. They show up in your feed all the time. Even if you're not subscribed to these, even if you're not following these people, you'll find this disturbing content will show up in your feed. Yeah. And I really firmly believe that we're being manipulated. I really do. And I think there's a lot of these young kids that are on these campuses that are very malleable. They're very easily influenced. And so many, I'm sure you've seen Konstantin Kisin from Trigonometry.
Sure.
He's done these interviews with these people, these protests, and so many of them are completely ignorant. They have no idea they're just doing it because they think they're a good person.
Yeah.
They're putting up their flag of virtue by saying free Palestine from the river to the sea, and they don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Like, what do you know what you're saying? You're saying wipe out Israel? Is that what you're saying?
Not only that, in a lot of cases, they're supporting regimes or ideologies
Right.
that would be perfectly antithetical to their main identity. So,
Right.
queers for Palestine,
Yeah.
chickens for Kentucky Fried Chicken, or I
Yeah.
like to use geese for foie gras because I'm from Montreal. I mean, imagine if you present yourself to the world with your queer identity, which is great, good for you. And now you decide, okay, let me see, should I be supporting Tel Aviv, which is one of the most queer-friendly places? I mean, short of Montreal, New York, San Francisco, Tel Aviv is right up there. So you would think that if my key identity, my definitional identity is my queerness, that I'm certainly putting all my chips with Tel Aviv. No, it's with Queers for Palestine. So that's exactly what parasitic thinking is, right?
And I really do think that's supported by other countries. I think they realize how vulnerable and idiotic a lot of Americans are, and they're just pushing that. And whether you realize it or not, social media, even if they're saying something ridiculous, it's very influential. And they can just move the boundaries a little bit by having the most extreme content, the most ridiculous things be so common, then less extreme content that would ordinarily be considered ridiculous now becomes accepted as normalized.
Yeah.
Which is what you're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Can I point? I mean, you alluded to it earlier about what the IDF might be doing. Can I just mention a few things about that?
Sure.
And I'm hardly the spokesperson of the IDF, but just it's an idea that I've been toying with, and I'll pitch it here for the first time. So this notion of equality of opportunities versus equality of outcomes.
Right.
Typically, we link it to all of the woke stuff, right? So equality of opportunities is great. Equality of outcomes is a cancer to human dignity. Okay. Let's now apply that concept, equality of outcomes, to war casualties. So I think this is what happens when people say, oh, but the IDF is being grotesque, because the currency that then matters becomes how many dead on each side, equality of outcome. But let me change it to a different moral currency, okay? Let's talk about intent. So for example, in the justice system, you could have a person who is found guilty of involuntarily vehicular homicide, and he kills four people. Okay, so 4 are dead. So that's equality of outcome. 4 died, versus someone who took out a hit on his entire family, his brother, sister, and parents, so that he can win the insurance money. But it's an undercover operation. The cops catch you. Even though in that case there were 0 killed, correct? That person will get a higher sentence because we understand in the law that intent matters. So now I think you know where I'm going with the analogy. So in the Palestinian IDF conflict, when, say, Hamas launches 6,000 rockets, every single one of which is intercepted by the Iron Dome, had they not had the Iron Dome, then the outcome could have been that 50,000 would have been killed, right? In an ideal world, from Hamas's perspective, our intent would be to eradicate every last Jew. They have it in their charter. So yes, it is true that if we just count the number of people who were killed on October 7th versus the number who were killed in the retaliation, if that's the only calculus that matters, then, oh yes, the IDF has gone way overboard. But once you change it to an existential intent issue, then maybe it's not such as bad of an outcome as you think, notwithstanding that a single innocent dead is a tragedy.
You could say it that way, but the problem with that is the Iron Dome does exist, and Hamas's military capabilities are far below Israel's. It would be like if some small person tried to punch me, and I moved out of the way and then beat them to death. And I said, no, I had to defend myself. I beat them to death. But I didn't have to beat them to death. They're just a small person. Even if they hit me, it wouldn't really hurt me.
Right.
It's not, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, defensively, I'm not worried about a real small person that doesn't know how to fight, who throws a punch at me.
So what would be, in your moral calculus, the ideal outcome that should have happened as a retaliation to October 7th?
That's a very good question. Obviously, I'm not a military analyst. If I was, you do have to take into consideration the tunnels. You do have to take into consideration the infrastructure. The question is, did they just knowingly bomb places where there was going to be hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians, knowing that there's going to be a few Hamas?
Yeah.
And that's what scares people. What scares people is that someone is willing to kill women and children just to get at bad guys, and they just say that's just part of the game. That seems horrific in the 2024 understanding of human life and morality and just the horrors of war. That, they're blowing up mosques, they're blowing up schools, they're blowing up apartment buildings, everything, anything where they think Hamas is.
So again, let me preface, and I shouldn't have to say this, that a single person killed
Right.
that's innocent is a tragedy.
Of course.
But compare that reality to almost any other war that you have in working memory. Why is there a unique, unbelievably high threshold of morality that is placed on the Israeli nation, right? Now, you probably already know this. The IDF does go through a lot of painstaking effort to try to minimize that, right? They drop leaflets in Arabic. They even sometimes call people in Arabic and say, don't go in this area. They hold. So, of course, they've killed many, many innocent people. But they're placed between a rock and a hard place. What can you do, right? The other side knows exactly that if they do exactly what they're doing, either you don't retaliate and we win, or you retaliate very harshly as they have, and then you still win, right? Today, the propaganda war has been completely won by Hamas, right? There's a complete genocide in the informational war against the IDF, right? One other point, and then I'll cede the floor back to you. The term genocide, Jacques Derrida was a very famous postmodernist who developed the field of deconstructionism. Language creates reality, right? He was one of the guys who allowed the ecosystem of up is down, men could be women, left is right, slavery is freedom, right? It's that postmodernist game that allows these kind of insane ideas to flourish. Well, when you misuse words like everything is a genocide, that does no one a service. There is no genocide. There is a killing of a lot of people. Again, every single one killed is a tragedy. But if Israel wanted to commit a genocide, by the end of my appearing on this 10th time on this show, there wouldn't be a single Palestinian left. So if they were genocidal in their intent, then they really are shitty genocidal maniacs because, first of all, the population, as you know, of the Palestinian territories has gone up fivefold, right? So that's really sucky genocide. And they've killed, depending on the count.
Right, but that's all previous to this military action that's going on now.
What are the numbers
The
that you
population
know
is going
of
up.
right now?
It's hard to say. Israel has one statistic, and then there's other statistics by human rights organizations that it estimate at least 12,000 missing in the rubble that are probably dead and 30,000 dead. Now, at the number of those 30,000, what percentage is Hamas? I'm not sure.
So I've heard the most favorable estimates to the IDF are about 1-to-1 ratio. The less estimate, it's about 1 to 1.5, okay? 1 to 2, up to 1 to 2. So if they
killed 30,000 people, 15,000 are Hamas? Is that what you're saying?
That would be
Best case scenario.
1 to 1 would be 15,000 to 15,000, and then you can take it from there, right?
Okay.
So
1 to 1.
1 to 1.
But half of them. So
half of them.
Yeah.
Would be,
So
right.
half of 30 is 15.
Exactly. Okay.
Right.
So now, let's compare it to, and I don't know if others have made this analogy. When you dropped the bomb, the atomic bomb, almost all the people who were killed were non-combatants, right? So then that ratio would be 250,000 killed to 0. I mean, unless there's a few Japanese military guys that were in Nagasaki or Hiroshima, you dropped. And again, I'm not trying to say, oh, but they're not as bad as these other guys, so they're okay. Let's give them a ribbon and a medal. But again, it is anti-Semitic when you place one group of people to a standard of morality that is not expected of anybody else. So, for example, if you really care about Arab lives, then you certainly should care about all of the Yemenis that have been killed, that are a lot more than whatever's happened after October 7th. You would care about the 500,000 Syrians that were killed. You would care about the war between Iran and Iraq that led to several million killed. And on, how about in Lebanese civil war, 150,000 died in a very small...
Right, but that's not happening currently, so people aren't totally aware of that. Like, just those statistics that you brought up, the Lebanese deaths, just most people are not aware of that. Most people that are discussing this, especially college kids, are not aware of that.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all ugly. It's all awful. There's nothing that you could say that is in any way, shape, or form positive about any of this.
Yeah.
The question is there another way to do it other than just bombing these areas where you know Hamas is and civilians?
There is another way, but I don't think it'll happen. Can I share it?
Yeah.
So Golda Meir, who was the fourth or fifth prime minister of Israel from, I think, 1969 to 1974, has two quotes, which I'm going to paraphrase. I don't have the exact quote. She said, if the Jews put down their arms, there'll be a genocide. If the Palestinians put down their arms, there'll be peace. So just remember that for a second. Mm-hmm. Second one is, if the Arabs, and she means in this case the Palestinian Arabs, if they were to love their children more than they hate ours, then there'd be peace. So why am I saying these two quotes? Because this battle is really not about land. And in a sense, we've already addressed this on previous shows where I've come and discussed about some of these Islamic issues. It is an existential affront that the Jewish state exists in the Middle East. So look at all other religious minorities across Arabia. Egypt used to be completely Coptic Christian, 100%, many hundred years ago. Today, there are 10% Copts left. What happened to those Copts? There used to be tons of Christians in Syria. What happened to those Syrians? There used to be tons of Christians in Lebanon. There still are some, about 30, 35%, but Lebanon used to be a majority Christian country. So the goal of Islam, not individual Muslims, right? Again, I don't need to preface by saying there are millions and millions of lovely, kind, peaceful Muslims. Of course there is. But Islam as an ideology, does it tolerate others? Well, we have 1,400 years of history that either says it does or it doesn't, right? We don't have to watch TikTok videos. And nothing could be clearer than what the words of Muhammad were, the prophet of Islam, who said that you need to rid Arabia of Christians, but certainly the Jews. So the existence of the land of Israel is an affront to that. One more point, and I'll cede the floor back to you. In Islam, there's a concept called Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb. That means the house of Islam and the house of war. Anything that's under the Islamic control is good. Anything that's yet to be under Islamic control is under the house of war. Once a territory is under Islamic control and you lose it, you have to get it back. It is your dominion forever. This is why, for example, Andalusia, which was at one point controlled, which is in current Spain, which was controlled by the Moors, an Islamic conquistador, a lot of jihadists will say, inshallah, we have to reconquer Andalusia. It is our land, because once it's under... So Israel existentially cannot exist. So why am I saying all this? You can't have peace if you have the other side that truly never wants for you to exist. That's the bottom line. If you can change people's heart where they say, look, I get a piece of land, you get another piece, let's build an incredible, vibrant co-society together, you'd have peace. But if you're taught from straight out of the womb that the Jews is the reason for every calamity in the world, you're not going to have peace.
But don't you think that there are Jews and there are Israelis that treat Palestinians as if they're less?
There is that in Texas in terms of treating people who are Hispanic. The darkness of the human heart is not monopolized by one group. There are super nasty Jews and there are incredibly lovely and kind Jews. There are super nice Muslims and incredibly brutal Muslims. So there is no monopoly on the darkness of the human heart. So I concede that. Of course, there are Jews that are not very keen on having Palestinian neighbors. But as someone who grew up in the two worlds, right, I'm an Arabic-speaking Jew. I hang around with tons of Muslims. I hang around with tons of Jews. Have I ever heard somebody in my Jewish family say, oh, God, I can't wait for us to eradicate the 1.52 billion Muslims in the world? I've never heard that. Have I heard incessantly all the time about, inshallah, we'll get rid of the Jews? Every second. You just have to say, hi, Ahmad. The next line is, God damn it, we got to get rid of the Jews. Now, it's become a lot.
Is it really that common where you are?
It's as common as the heat in Texas. It is definitional. As a matter of fact, I introduced a game, I mean facetiously, but I mean it seriously, 6 Degrees of Jew. So that's a play on 6 degrees of...
Kevin Bacon.
Exactly. So I give you a calamity in the world, and you've got up to 6 causal steps to blame the Jew. So an Amazonian frog just died in the Amazon. Go. And so I will post these on Twitter, and people give answers.
Right.
Now, oftentimes they're just playing along, but that's the mindset. You got diabetes? Well, that's because the Jews who are controlling the pharmaceutical industry are not releasing the drug. I'll give you a recent one that I faced.
Okay.
So I put up a police lineup of some guys that had been caught in Huddersfield, which is a town in England, who had been grooming and raping young British white girls. And you may or may not know this. I'm not sure if we've discussed it in the past. In Britain, over the past 25 years, there's been an unbelievable industrial scale level grooming and raping of young white girls by Asian men. That's a euphemism for men of a certain religious heritage, but you say they're Asian. So their names are, let me summarize them for you. Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad, 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 Ahmad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Ahmad, Muhammad, Ahmad, Muhammad. Okay? So I put those up, and I sarcastically said, I don't have a big enough brain to do the big data analytics to understand what is the commonality across all those gentlemen. Could anybody help me? Do you know how many people wrote to me and blamed it on the Jews? Not facetiously. So now I'm going to ask you, Joe.
How?
I was just going to ask you that. How is it when 3 Muhammads rape your 12-year-old British girl, you blame it on Mordechai? 3 Muhammads lead to Mordechai. Tell me how. You tell me.
I don't know. How do they do it?
Who let them in? It's the Jewish cabal who controls immigration policy. It's George Soros, the Jew, who controls the open society ideology.
I don't think you could really just connect George Soros to Jewish if you look at his policies. He seems anti-Western civilization.
I agree, but for the Jew hater, any causal explanation.
So one individual who just happens to be Jewish,
or they point to some other one. There's one I don't even know who she is. I think Barbara Lerner or something. Somebody will correct us in the comments section, where they show her saying something. Oh, we need to flood, and she happens to be Jewish. But for every Jewish person who is pro open door policy, there's a counter Jewish person. Here's one who is not for open border policies, right? Stephen Miller, who worked in the Trump administration, is Jewish. He's probably the biggest anti-open door immigration. So, but that's the mindset of the Jew hater. Everything is blamed. There's this incredible diabolical feature of the Jew that they're able to at times pretend that they're victims, but really they're diabolical and genocidal. It's grotesque, man.
It's weird. It's just weird that it became so out in the open, and that's what makes me think that they're being influenced. I just can't imagine that there was that much anti-Semitism before October 7th.
But why? Why do you, the influence is coming for what purpose? Just to create havoc?
Yes. Yeah, to keep people at each other's throats. I really think so. And also to completely screw up democracy. People have lost all their faith in voting. They've lost all their faith in the money behind politics and the influence behind politics. And the more this stuff just gets brought up, the more chaos there is, the more hatred there is, the more divide there is.
Yeah.
Even amongst the Democratic Party, right, which we talked about the other day, that some large number, we think it's around 70% of Jewish people vote Democrat. But now, the Democratic Party is full on with this Palestine thing. And, you see it on college campuses, this rampant anti-Semitism, death to the Jews being tolerated, literally saying that, yelling it out.
And by the way, you can go back, so I wouldn't be able to tell you which number, which episode, but you can go back to earlier episodes that have appeared on this glorious podcast where you will see that I would have predicted exactly what we're seeing now. And it's not because I'm a prophet, or it's not because I'm so intelligent. It's because you simply have to have the power of having the imagination to extrapolate from a current trend to some future and outcome, right? So if you let into your country people who have genocidal Jew hatred as an endemic feature of their societies. So I'll give you, since people love stats. So there was a Pew is a nonpartisan, if anything, they probably lean towards being more woke. So Pew has these global surveys that they conduct. So in 2010, they conducted a survey looking at how favorable are you towards the Jews across a whole bunch of Islamic countries. Now, if I were to tell you that 10% of the polled people exhibited, Jew hatred, you'd say, oh boy, that's a big number. 10% is a lot. Okay. How about if I tell you that for most of those polled countries, it was between 95 to 99%? So I know people understand what 95 to 99 means. If I poll 100 people, 95 to 99 will express very problematic Jew hatred. Okay? So now if I let in 100,000 such people into the country, it doesn't take a fancy evolutionary psychologist and a professor with a 47-page academic CV to say, well, probably Jew hatred is going to go up. So that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the outcome of having an immigration policy that has let in people that don't share our foundational values. Again, this doesn't mean someone's going to write in the comments section, what a hypocrite. You're an immigrant, Gad Saad. Well, there are immigrants and there are immigrants. There are tons of Muslims who want to come in here and leave all that baggage at the door. They want nothing to do with that. They just want to live the American experience. The problem is we don't have the machine that can look into your heart and mind, right? So it's a statistical game. So if you're going to let in hundreds, look what's happening in Germany. Look what's happening in France. Look what's happening in Denmark.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think that stuff is happening? Why do you think there's this mass immigration?
So that's a great question. So it's covered partly in Parasitic Mind, my earlier book, and in my next book, which I call Suicidal Empathy, right? So empathy is a emotion that has evolved for very clear evolutionary reasons. So just like any of our other emotions, for example, envy, there are evolutionary reasons why we've evolved the emotion of envy, right? It can compel us forward. I see that Joe's doing well, keeping up with the Joneses, maybe it'll get me off my fat ass so I can work harder. So there are very clear evolutionary reasons why empathy exists. But the problem is when empathy misfires, it either becomes hyperactive or it misfires in directing the empathy to the wrong person. So, for example, illegal immigrants more important than American vets, right? And I can show you many public policies where you have these insane policies, all of which are due to suicidal empathy. So to answer your question, I think that the Western mind is we are kind, tolerant, compassionate, empathetic people. There are people out there, they're Guatemalan, they're Honduran, they're Yemeni, who don't have it as well as we do. Wouldn't it be nice if we open up our doors? So the reflex is a noble one. It's a nice one, but it exists in unicornia. The real world doesn't operate that way. If you let in people that have a huge hatred of homosexuality, are you going to have an increase in homophobia in your country or a decrease, right? So I think that's the answer. The answer is misdirected empathy across the West.
Is it really that simple? Because it seems like it's happened so rapidly that it seems like a plan to create more chaos. Because it's happened. The border policy in America is puzzling. It's baffling because it seems like there's a plan to flood the country.
So it's a sort of a conspiratorial kind of cabal.
This seems like there's something going on that's allowing it to happen, even though everyone recognizes it's a problem and it's solvable, but they don't solve it. In fact, the United States government has actively tried to stop Texas from enforcing their border.
So, but I think that's just so. I've often tweeted that the most dangerous weapon in human context is a parasitized mind, right? I mean, a bomb is dangerous, but it is the human mind that activates that bomb, right? Mm-hmm. It's a guy with a little mustache that said that Jews are the real problem in the world, and I need to get rid of the world of that parasite, right? So parasitic thinking, I mean, one of the reasons I think that book did so well is because it really explained how all of these parasitic ideas came to a head together. And they were all spawned on university campuses over the past 40 to 80 years. So one hypothesis is what you said, which is there is kind of a grand scheme that's willfully doing this. Another one is that all of the Western leaders of roughly the same age, I mean, within 20 years of each other, are all a product of a Western education, university education, that was completely infected with these dreadful parasitic ideas, so that when these leaders go out there and have the power to enact policies, they enact these policies. So my view is slightly different from yours in that I don't think that there is a supra mega, willful plan. It's just that all of those Western leaders are the product of a really shitty university system.
Right, but there's obviously two schools of thought, right? There's the left-wing school of thought and the right-wing school of thought in regards to this. The right-wing school of thought wants to seal our borders, wants to secure the borders, wants to stop illegal immigration. The left-wing wants, I don't know what they want, because they start talking about border policies being a problem as well. And they start talking about the issue at the border, and they try to blame Trump for the issues at the border, which is always hilarious.
Yeah.
But they're just so, with that kind of stuff, with blaming, like when Biden blames Trump for things that he clearly did, it's just gaslighting, right? And it just shows you how little respect they have for people's ability to understand what's actually going on.
Well, look, suicidal empathy, we can move beyond the border. How about, say, in the justice system? Suicidal empathy results in you caring more about the perpetrator than the victim. That's suicidal empathy, right? Because that argument, so here's how that leftist argument works. If a person, especially a criminal of color, commits a crime, that's probably because he grew up as a person of color, so he's already been marginalized by the society.
Right.
So now he commits a crime. You're now double whamming him by putting him in the penal system. So you need to be more caring. So he's already got 57 previous arrests. Let's give him a 58th chance. So again, I don't think it comes from really parasitized thinking, right?
Right, but those policies are supported by George Soros specifically. And he actively goes after DAs
exactly.
that have the most lenient and ridiculous policies in regards to no cash bails, releasing violent criminals. Like, that seems like that's done on purpose. That's done with intent.
But it's done on purpose. So I think where we may differ is you think it's because there is a duplicitous evil, let's cause havoc, whereas I think they actually believe that that's the noble position, right? And there should be no borders. There is no illegal human. What kind of bullshit is this? Why do you have a lock on your door, right? So why is it that I get to have sex with my beautiful wife, but all these homeless guys are sexually starved? That's not fair. That's the parasitism of socialism. We're all equal. Why do you make a lot more money than I do, Joe? That's not fair. I need to have as much money as you, right? So I don't think, I hope that it's not what you're saying is true, because then that's even more sinister, right? That there's kind of a boo-hoo-hoo. I just think it's people who are misguided in their misdirected nobility, right?
I think it's both.
You think it's both? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's both.
Maybe it's both. Yeah.
I think there's definitely a lot of misguided people, but I think there's definitely a plan. It's too organized. The DA system, the DA thing with funding the far leftist DAs and then funding someone who opposes them, who's even more ridiculous. Yeah. That seems to be a plan.
Yeah.
And he's got a pattern of that, and he seems to enjoy spending his money in that way.
But
I think he enjoys it. I think it's like this crazy game.
Right. What do you think about what's going on with your boyfriend Trump these days?
What? Oh, the trials?
The trials.
Fascinating. I had Mike Baker on, who was formerly a CIA operative, but we were talking about that no one's ever been charged for something like that before. No one's ever been prosecuted for something like that before. Certainly no political opponents. And my thing is the danger, the people that are on the left that don't understand that now you set a precedent. You set a terrible precedent. And if Trump does get in office, what is to stop him from going after all of his political enemies in the same exact way? Yeah. Are we going to do this now? Every time someone's in a position of power, whether it's a governor or whether it's a president or what have you, when they have a political opponent, they will hire people to go after that political opponent and trump up, no pun intended, a bunch of bullshit charges and drag them through the courts so that the people that only have a peripheral understanding of what's going on, say, oh my God, he's a criminal. Keep that criminal out of the White House. Like, okay.
Do you think a lot of people who historically had been against Trump are now honest enough to see what a sham this whole thing is and are revising their positions? Or do you think
there's quite a few, yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of bravery to do that. And it depending upon your social environment. There's a lot of people that just can't step outside the lines of whatever the ideology their neighborhood is attached to and their community is attached to.
The reason why I asked the question is because I recently appeared maybe about 5-6 months ago on a British psychiatrist show. A small show, but I thought he was a really interesting guy. He wanted to talk about how you apply evolution in psychiatry and so on. So I was like, let's do it. Towards the end of the show, or maybe it was even the last question, he said, in your 30-year career as a behavioral scientist, as a professor, what is the singular human phenomena that has surprised you the most? Which I thought was an amazing question. I had never been asked before.
Good question.
So, yeah, it's an amazing one because, I've seen tons of stuff. And so I paused for a moment and then I said, I think it's the inability of people to change their opinions once they are anchored in a position.
Yes.
And so it was in that spirit that I was asking you the question. Because in my experience, despite the fact that I have a chapter in the Parasitic Mind on how to seek truth, and therefore I'm offering a vaccine against falsehoods, I'm actually quite pessimistic for some people who go, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. Because they're so anchored. There's no amount of evidence that I could ever show you that could move you a millimeter from your position. That's very disheartening.
It's very disheartening. It's very foolish. I always try to tell people, do not be married to your ideas. Yeah. You should not connect them to you. They are just ideas. They are not you. And if you have supported an idea that you find to be false and you are afraid to admit that you were incorrect, that is far more weak than being incorrect. Because now you know that you were incorrect, but your pride is keeping you from admitting it. That is beyond foolish. And now people will always know that you're going to do that with what people will forgive you if you make mistakes. People will forgive you if you're incorrect. We have all made mistakes. Yeah. We are all occasionally incorrect. I'm incorrect all the time. But I make a big point of not attaching myself to ideas. I will argue them if I think they are correct, but they are not me.
Yeah.
Patrice O'Neill had a great quote, and he said, you could hold your opinions, but don't let your opinions hold you.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to know that you're not ideas. You're a human being. And it's a challenge when you are faced with the reality of the fact that you've made an error, especially if you've been bold about it, if you've been condescending to people who disagree with it, if you're egotistical in your position, you connected yourself to righteousness and intellect and science and whatever other words you want to throw around that make your opinion more valid than the other people's opinion. And then you find out you were wrong.
Right.
Okay, if we are ever going to trust you again, you have to tell us why you were wrong, how you were wrong, and what that feels like, and what you've learned from this. Because if you don't, if you keep arguing that, you keep doing it, now we have no respect for you.
Fauci.
Now, all we know, Fauci's the worst, but he's worse than that. I think he's far worse than that. I think he's deceptive.
Yeah.
I mean, if the real Anthony Fauci, the book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is not, if it's not accurate, he would be sued. He would be sued.
Right.
And just forget about what happened during COVID, just what we know took place during the AIDS crisis. Everyone should read that book. Everyone should understand this same game plan was played out during the AIDS crisis. And it's a game plan where they're in cahoots with the pharmaceutical drug companies, and they push this thing as being the only remedy, and this is how, and they make tremendous amounts of money.
Yeah.
And that's all real. This is not tinfoil hat, conspiracy wearing shit. That's real. But if you supported him because you thought that he was the science, and then over time you have realized that, oh my God, they did work with Peter Daszak. They did fund through another organization gain of function research. He did lie about it. It was talked about in emails. He did contact people who were saying one thing and had them change their position. He did. They did ridicule the lab leak theory when they knew it to be correct. They knew it. They knew they were doing the exact same research on the exact same viruses in that exact same place where it broke out. They knew it.
Right.
And they lied because they wanted to cover their ass, and we let them get away with it.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about the inability to admit to a wrongdoing in science, because oftentimes when you think about people who are anchored in their positions, you think about political arguments. You think that somehow you romanticize scientists as being unbiased purveyors and pursuers of the truth, and nothing could be further from the truth. So I'll give you just a couple of examples, historical examples.
Okay.
I mean, of course, Galileo is a
Sure.
perfect example. Copernicus is a great example.
Right.
Darwin is a great example. But let's look at some other ones that people may not be familiar with. So I think his name, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Semmelweis. He was the gentleman who arguably has saved more people than anybody else in medicine. Do you have any idea who it is?
No, is he the penicillin guy?
Not the penicillin. That's, what's his name? Sir Fleming. I think that's Fleming. I think he was a Scottish physician, if I'm not mistaken. No, this guy is the gentleman who told other physicians that they should
wash their hands.
Wash their hands.
Yes.
So do you remember? I think he was a Hungarian physician who was noticing that there was this huge mortality rate of women as they were giving birth. And so he started running these naturally occurring experiments where the physician has just worked on a cadaver and then goes and does the obstetrics. Okay. So when he said, wash your hands, he died, I think, penniless, destitute, in a mental asylum or something, right? And then later people said, oops, he was right?
Because they didn't understand bacteria back then.
They didn't understand bacteria. What? Yeah, that guy.
Right?
That's it. Semmelweis, exactly.
Cadaveric particles, does that mean?
Cadavers.
Cadaver,
Right.
yeah.
So
Every case of childhood fever was caused by resorption of cadaveric particles. Oh, my God.
But the blowback against this guy from
Oh
the
my
senior
God.
physicians, I mean, this guy was destitute. He died completely unvalidated. I mean, it was only post hoc that there you go, nervous breakdown.
So allegedly suffered a nervous breakdown, was committed to an asylum by his colleagues. In the asylum, he was beaten by the guards. Oh, God.
It's an incredible story. Here's another one. I don't remember his name. The truth tester, Jamie, will get it out for us. There's a gentleman who won the Nobel Prize, I'd say in the last 20 or 30 years, for arguing that ulcers are caused by a particular virus, or I don't know if it's a virus or a bacterium, and everybody laughed him out of town. He ended up winning the Nobel Prize. And so I often joke with my students. I say, if people laugh at your ideas and fight them, it's either for one of two reasons. It's a really shitty idea and it's worthy of that derision,
right,
or prepare to go to Stockholm to win the Nobel Prize. Because, I mean, literally...
Right, it's one or the other.
It's one or the other, because the
Yeah.
Nobel Prize is nothing but a history of people saying, what a quack this moron is. No way. Oops, here's your Nobel Prize, doctor.
And isn't that because of what we talk about? Because of ego, and that ego being connected to your ideas. If someone comes along with a revolutionary idea that's contrary to what you currently believe, you take it as an affront to yourself.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
So I gave a talk. This is going back to some of my early appearances here, where we would talk a lot more evolutionary psychology. I gave a talk at two talks at University of Michigan when my first book came out. It was an academic book, Evolutionary Basis of Consumption: How do you apply evolutionary psychology in human behavior in general, consumer behavior in particular. I give the talk in the psychology department on a Thursday, and everybody's like, oh yeah, this is gorgeous. Because a lot of the psychologists were trained in physiological psychology, biological psychology, and so on. So they were totally appreciative of the fact that you can't really study human behavior without understanding the biological signatures of human behavior. Okay. Then I go to the business school the next day, Ross School of Business. I give the exact same talk, okay? I couldn't finish a single sentence because all of the professors, and it was usually the professor, it wasn't the doctoral students who were, because the doctoral students are still malleable. Their brains are still being formed. They're happy to listen. It's the senior professor who has spent 30 years arguing that human minds are born tabula rasa, empty slated, and it's only socialization that teaches the consumer to be how he or she is, that they were really offended by my stuff. So they would constantly interrupt me and berate me. And I remember, as a side personal note, my wife was in the audience that day. She had come with me. And prior to that talk, she had said, oh, I feel really sick. I probably have food poisoning. We later found out that she was pregnant with our first daughter. So there's both a really bad memory and a really good memory associated with the University of Michigan.
So what was their position when you were saying this?
Biology does not...
So they were interrupting you?
Nonstop. I probably got through, so let's say, I don't remember the number of slides. Let's say I had 30 slides. I maybe got to slide 10. Because, so here's first question. Oh, if everything is due to evolutionary pressures, how do you explain homosexuality then? If everything is due to survival instinct, how do you explain suicide then? By the way, there are evolutionary explanations for suicide and homosexuality, right? Humans are a sexually reproducing species, even though chaste monks exist, right? people do have a survival instinct, even though some people commit suicide. Men are taller than women, even though your Aunt Julie is taller than your Uncle Bob. So what happens with people in terms of a cognitive obstacle, they take a singular datum as proof that a statement that is true at the population level has been violated. It hasn't, right? Every single WNBA player is taller than most men. That does not invalidate the fact that men are taller than women.
Right.
So all of the morons at the University of Michigan were also coming to that kind of stuff, right? Because they didn't like the idea, to our earlier discussions that we've had on the show. A lot of people don't like the idea that we are biologically determined. They think that that's a form of, you're just an executor of your genes. But that's the wrong view, by the way, because everything is an interaction between your genes and the environment, right? Even specific genes get turned on as a function of the environment. So the fact that you believe that we have biological imperatives that guide our behavior doesn't make us blind executor of our genes.
Right. And that's what's important. But the idea that everyone is born a blank slate is so silly, because there's children that don't even grow up with their parents that have traits that their parents have.
No kidding.
And also happen to have talents that their parents have for some strange reason.
And call their dog the same name. I mean, have you
There's
heard
a lot
some-
of weirdness to it. There's a lot of weirdness to memory, like genetic memory, like whoever you are. It's not as simple as you were a baby, you started off clear and blank. That's not real. We learn things somehow or another through some I guess it's explored, but not quite understood process.
Yeah.
And this process even encourages things like racism. There's even detrimental ideas that are inherited through children that have been proven. But they don't know exactly the mechanism, right?
So because you mentioned memory, so maybe I could talk about how you study memory from an evolutionary perspective.
Please.
So
is that where, can I ask you this before we start?
Sure.
Do you think that's where like ophidiophobia and arachnophobia and things like that come from?
Yeah, so there is actually a lot of research looking at the evolutionary roots of phobia. That's studied in evolutionary clinical psychology and in Darwinian psychiatry.
But the ones for me that are fascinating are ophidiophobia and arachnophobia, fear of snakes and fear of spiders, because that evolutionarily makes sense.
Exactly.
If you either got bit and survived, or you saw someone get bit, or you see a spider and you're like, oh shit.
But that's why, by the way, you don't go see your clinical psychologist because you have a fear of guns or fears of cars, even though cars and guns kill a lot more people
than spiders.
Exactly. If you study the manifestations of clinical cases of phobia, they're exactly what you're saying.
Because from doing Fear Factor, we would encounter people that had both of those. And man, when you see it in real life, it's like a person's possessed by a demon.
Right.
It's crazy. Right. When you see like high level ophidiophobia and people see snakes, their whole body starts shaking. They can't keep their hands still. It's crazy, man. It's not like, I see a dog, looks like a scary dog. Whoa, keep away from that dog. It's not like that. It's like your whole body.
By the way, I actually don't think it's at the clinical level, but in the Parasitic Mind in Chapter 1, I talk about the maladaptive, or maybe adaptive phobia that I have of mosquitoes. So so early in my marriage to my wife, maybe that was one of the best ways to test if she'd go the whole route with me, is we were traveling to Antigua, and we had the misfortune of it's in the Caribbean, there are a lot of mosquitoes, and a couple of mosquitoes got in. I spent with her complete patience, probably till 2 a.m, tracking and killing every single mosquito in that condo. Damn. Because the thought of that disgusting, monstrous pig sucking the blood out of me was just unbearable. And so I literally will turn into a little girl if we see a mosquito in the house. I cannot go on with my day. I can't watch TV. I can't train. The mosquito must die. Now, in a sense, that's perfectly adaptive, because we know that by far, if you add up the tallies of people killed by mosquitoes versus all other animals combined, it's not even a minuscule
There's not another thing that kills people as much as mosquitoes.
Right? So that's perfectly adaptive.
Yes.
But do you want me to go to the memory stuff?
Sure.
Yeah. So think about, say, a squirrel. It has evolved a memory that allows it to remember the spatial location in your backyard where it stores caches of food, so that it has its own memory bias, so that even though it won't detect it by smell, because let's say in Montreal it's under 4 feet of snow, it has a mental map so that it perfectly knows where it hid everything, right? Now, the human memory has evolved to solve different problems. So then if you are a memory researcher studying memory from an evolutionary perspective, you would say, well, what would the human memory solve as an adaptive problem? So let me give you one such example. So if I show you a bunch of photos of people, okay, images of faces, and I put a descriptor next to each one where I tag that person as a social cheater or not a cheater. So what does social cheating means? Lack of reciprocation. So if I do something for you, then you will cheat and recant and not, I scratch your back, but you'll never scratch mine.
Right.
Now that information about the personal characteristic of that individual is an evolutionarily important datum, right? So now I'm going to show you all these people. I control for their good looks, right? So I don't put all of the cheaters as being good looking and all the, right? Because then you might remember them because they were good looking, not because they were cheaters, right? So I put this array of faces, and then later I ask you to remember whether you'd seen that face or not. And people end up remembering at a much higher level any face that had been tagged as being a social cheater. Do you follow?
Yes.
Therefore, your perceptual system works in cahoots with your memory system to pay attention more to information that is evolutionarily relevant so that I'm more likely to recall it and remember it. So that would be an example of how you would apply the evolutionary lens to study how our memory operates. Here's another example. Not in the case of social dynamics, but in the case of remembering where foods is. So if you ask people to go through a maze of food and then ask them to remember where particular foods are, they're much more likely to remember the locations of high-calorie foods. So in this case, it's not that I have a domain general mechanism that just learns where things are. There is a sensorial bias to me being more likely to remember the location of something if it is evolutionarily relevant. And there are many, many other such examples. So that would be a wonderful demonstration of how the evolutionary lens adds a whole layer of explanatory power to what typically memory researchers have done, which is usually they study memory as just the domain general mechanistic system, whereas the evolutionary psychologist says, no, but why did that mechanism evolve to be of that form?
Right. And why do animals have memories even if they're not growing up with their parents? How do they know to pee on fire hydrants?
Exactly.
Right? Where are they getting this from?
Yeah.
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
You know, how do they know to go after certain animals?
Yeah.
Like I have a golden retriever. He loves all dogs, like little dogs, like the size of
I just met him, yeah.
I mean, he's much more interested in people than he is, but he's never mean. Right. But if Carl was a squirrel that size, he would be dead. So he knows the difference between something that's small, that's a dog, that's just tolerated. You know, oh, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
Or something that's that big, that's a squirrel, which is murder. I'm going to murder that thing.
Okay, you said murder.
Yeah.
And that led me, because I was...
He's a murderer. He's a squirrel murderer.
So
you
know what's a group of crows called?
A murder.
A murder.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you now about another study, and maybe Jamie can pull it off. I think it's a guy at University of Washington, maybe. I hope I'm not wrong. Where he wanted to see whether crows remember the face of a really nasty guy so that they can... You know, if he then comes again, they'll start calling.
Right.
And he kind of took like an image of the face, and then he would either wear it or not. And then he would, I don't remember what the dependent measure was, but it was something to the effect of, then he's studying. There you go. I mean, I love it. I love having Jamie.
So this guy had a mean face, and he did mean things, and the crows recognized him.
And so then it starts spreading to the entire group where they exactly know, you see this face, remember it, he's a fucker.
That makes sense. Crows are insanely smart.
Oh, they're smarter than most people.
Smart.
Have you seen the ones from, I think, New Caledonia that do all the stuff with the... Maybe, Jamie, you could pull that one up. I think that's the smartest of all that avian species. They can take rocks and like a thousand different things to get food out of things that I guarantee you and I would sit there for 18 hours and we wouldn't crack that mystery.
Yeah, they figured out how to use tools to get other tools to extract food.
Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go.
It's amazing.
It's just unbelievable.
They put rocks in there to raise the water level. I mean, a little kid wouldn't even figure that out. I mean, they're fucking smart, man.
Look at this. Look at this.
It's crazy.
Well, I love...
It's also their brains are so small, which really is really confusing.
Bird brain.
Yeah. It's really confusing. Like, large brains don't... I mean, we don't really know how intelligent an animal is unless we see it manipulate its environment or communicate.
Yeah.
Because it's possible that elephants are insanely smart. They have immense memories. Their memories are nuts. Like they get reunited with their calves like 20 years later, and they run and embrace each other, and it's just joyous. When elephants die, they mourn. They mourn the death.
Yeah.
They have huge brains, but it's also a huge animal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't manipulate its environment, so we don't respect it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the reason why dolphins are in SeaWorld. It's because that's literal slavery. It's slavery of probably a parallel, or if not more, intellectual species.
Yeah.
Something with a cerebral cortex 40% larger than a human being's. Something that communicates in a language that we can't decipher. Something that has different dialects. Something that operates in these very tight social groups.
But they do some rough sex. I don't know if you've
Well,
heard
they
of
do. They're
pretty
dolphins are horrible.
Yeah,
Dolphins they kill their babies.
There's no hashtag Me Too with the dolphins, let me tell you.
It's worse than that. Dolphins, when they find a female and she has a child, if he has not had sex with that dolphin female, that child's not his, so he'll kill that child.
Lions do the same.
But what they'll do is the females will have a sex with as many dolphins as they can.
So you don't know.
So you don't know whose kid it is.
That's it.
So that they don't kill their baby.
There you go.
Which is wild.
There you go.
I mean, but that's how you live when there's no doors. You're in the ocean, there's no doors.
Open border.
Wild. It's just wild. It's just murder soup.
You said manipulate the environment. So have you heard of the bowerbird? Do you know what that is?
No.
So the bowerbird, maybe. Sorry, I keep
How do you
going.
spell?
BOWER. So the bowerbird creates a bower, which is a structure that serves no purpose other than demonstrating my artistic... There you go.
Really?
So, by the way, you know what I'm loving about today's show? It's like I feel like I'm back to lecturing my evolutionary psychology stuff.
Good. I need a class.
Oh, yeah. So look what he's doing. You see? So let me explain what's happening here, unless you want to watch it first.
No, please explain.
So what... It's one of the only species other than humans that uses artistic ability as a mating cue.
Wow.
Right? So, Picasso, short little guy, bald, ugly, he's got a huge lineup of hot women who want to have sex with him because he's Picasso. That's what the bowerbird is doing. He's saying, look at how architecturally savvy I am. Look how symmetric my bowerbird is. Not only that, by the way, see how... Oh, there you go. Okay, she said you're good enough. Let's do this. Let's do this.
You have excellent trophies.
Okay, so now, but you saw all those other blue things?
Yes.
Okay, so if you travel to Australia, in certain regions, there are signs from the government saying if you are women, don't be careful, don't wear shiny things on your head. Why? Because these assholes will come at you, attack the women's head, steal the shiny things so that they could use the shiny things in their bower to attract the ladies.
Wow.
Now that's smart. That's smarter than most men.
Not really. But I see what you're saying. But look at this setup, man. This guy's got this dope pad. He's got like a bachelor pad with flowers out in front. Like, ladies, don't you like flowers?
No, that's the girl. That was the girl.
Oh, it's the girl.
Yeah, that's the girl. Usually in the avian species, the drab one is the girl and the flashy one is the guy.
Right. Like, nobody gives a fuck about female flamingos.
Yeah, right.
Fuck out of here. Female flamingos. What am I going to do with that? I need a dude with a
Exactly.
strut around.
Exactly.
If you got flamingos, man, you're a baller. That's a move, right? Have a flamingo in your yard. Just
That's the
walk
way to
around.
go. So you only have
I'm thinking of peacock.
You only have a dog?
I'm thinking of peacock. I'm doing the whole thing like I'm a peacock, but I'm saying flamingo. Yeah, I only have a dog. I have chickens too.
By the way, you like those exotic ones?
No,
that
chickens.
just like regular.
They lay chickens.
But,
they lay eggs.
But I'm scared to ask this. They become pets. You don't eat them, right? Or
no, I don't eat. I will if somebody fucks around. Somebody tries to hurt somebody, I'll grab those little fuckers. They're little dinosaurs. When one of them was younger, this is my old group of chickens that I had when my youngest daughter was a baby. They were pecking her feet. And there's this one cunty chicken that we had. And
I feel like this is going to be a Christine No moment.
No.
Okay.
No. Nobody died.
Okay.
My wife, unfortunately, they all did. Coyotes got them.
Oh.
And dogs. Long story. Anyway, point is, I go, no, she's trying to eat the baby's feet. Like, you got to understand, this is not like she thinks that's a worm.
Right.
She thinks she can get away with eating. They eat each other. They fucking peck at each other. They'll murder a mouse. Have you never seen a chicken and a mouse together? Whew.
Really, huh?
We had a fence, and this is very unfortunate, but we had a fence that was glass. And one of the side effects of this glass fence was hawks. And hawks would be swooping down to try to get a rat or some other rodent or something, and they'd, bam, nosedive into this glass. And we lost like 3 hawks. We're like, this is fucked up. You know, I was like, maybe we should go back to the other fence. My wife was like, fuck you. I like this fence. So it was one of those conversations where we were like, this seems like it's our fault that these hawks died, right? So one of them made it. One of them lived, and they took the hawk and they put it in like a big like washing machine box and contacted this wildlife rescue thing. And they said, well, okay, if you're going to have it, because we're not open until Monday, you got to feed it things. So what do you feed it? So you have to go to the store. So we went to the pet store. They get these things called pinkies. And when pinkies are just baby mice. They're baby mice that they're not going to live. They're separated from their mother. You feed them to reptiles.
Okay.
It's gross, right?
Nice.
And so the hawk ate most of them, but he didn't eat one. So they were like, we're going to raise it. I go, listen, you can't just do that. You can't just like feed a bunch of these little things to this giant raptor and then say, now we're going to take this one that survived and raise it. First of all, the nightmares that little fucker would have. But second of all, it's not viable. It's not going to, it's not going to live.
Yeah.
I go, let's just give it to the chickens. So I brought it outside, and I put it in the chicken's cage. One chicken grabs it as fast as I've ever seen a chicken move. And then every other chicken runs after that chicken and tries to get it away from her.
Is it a defensive thing, or they want to eat it?
They want to eat it.
Okay.
And so she has it in her mouth, and they're trying to steal it from her, and they just tear it apart and devour it like dinosaurs.
Wow.
Like, it's so crazy watching them kill
So
things.
I'm not feeling so guilty at the genocide of chicken that I eat.
It's still fucked up because it's the soul of the animal. It's not being expressed as nature intended. The soul of the animal should be a chicken. It's not that you shouldn't eat chickens, but chickens should live as chickens. They should wander around and pick bugs and eat worms and do all the things that chickens love doing. To have a chicken just in a box for its entire existence, you're
100%.
stealing souls.
That's
like
true.
you're doing something fucked up that's way more fucked up than just raising a farm. If you got cows and they're on a pasture and every day they're just being cows, and then one day you take them in a stall and bang, this thing goes into their brain and they're dead, that is way less evil. That is way more humane than what's going to happen to them in the wild. What are they going to do? They're going to either freeze to death or starve to death or get torn apart by wolves.
Right.
Torn apart. If you're going to have cows everywhere and people want to reintroduce wolves everywhere, congratulations, you've got Wild Kingdom.
Right.
You got Wild Kingdom happening in your neighborhood. If that's what you want, and if you don't want people to eat cows anymore, okay, what are you going to do with the cows?
Yeah.
Are you going to sterilize them? Are you going to keep a certain amount? Are you going to play God with cows? Are you going to say the cows can't breed? Are you going to give the boys' cows birth control? What are you going to do? How are you going to do? Oh, you're going to introduce predators. Okay. How are you going to keep kids from those predators? How are you going to keep dogs from those predators? Have you thought about this? No, you haven't. There's people that they're reintroducing grizzly bears to Washington as we speak. We're going to reintroduce the things that we killed because they killed everybody. We're so smart. It's bananas. These people are out of their fucking minds. And they're not, they don't have a real understanding of actual nature. The horrible thing is this commodization of nature. Is taking animals and factory farming them in these horrific conditions where it's illegal to film. It's illegal to. They have ag-gag laws
Because it's so
because
traumatic.
it's so
Yeah.
traumatic
Yeah, yeah.
and it's so horrific. It would affect the industry.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree.
That's what's wrong with eating meat.
Yeah.
Being a part of the natural cycle of life is what made humans human. If you want the most nutrients, it comes from animal protein. There's a reason why it's so cherished.
I've made, not using the same words, but I've made roughly the same argument when the tofu brigade came after me, because I was offering some evolutionary reasons for why we have to have animal protein as part of our diets. And they were so pissed at me because they thought it was very hypocritical that on the one hand, I could share so many tweets and posts demonstrating how much I love animals. And then in another photo, I show some steak or here's what my wife is cooking. And that to them was completely incongruous and was proof of my, moral degeneracy. And then I actually created 2 Saad Truth clips where I was really demonstrating the evolutionary reasons, archaeological data, dental data, physiognomic data, anthropological data, and they just wouldn't have it. You're a hypocrite. You can't love an animal and eat an animal. So I'm glad that you
Well, there's a real problem with that, too. And this is something that people dismiss very openly, but I don't think we should. I think plants are alive. And I don't think they're just alive in a way that we can feel completely fine about growing them in this insane monocrop agriculture place and pouring industrial grade fertilizer and pesticides all over them. I think they're a thing that thinks.
Yeah.
I think they're a thing that communicates with their environment, but they just do it in a way that we don't understand. They do it through mycelium. They arrange resources. They allocate resources towards plants that need them more. They have some sort of a network of communication.
I was going to say, have you seen the networks of fungi?
Yes,
That is mind-blowing.
I had Paul Stamets in the podcast a couple of times, and he's a mycologist and just a brilliant guy, and he really explains it all so well. It's so mind-blowing, the relationship that the mycelium have with the nutrients in the earth, and that it's the earth is not dirt. It's like a living environment. Yeah. It's this environment that they've ruined through monocrop agriculture.
Yeah.
And that's what's wrong with farming. It's not farming. Farming is a perfect way to balance an ecosystem. When those people do it the right way, like those people from White Oaks Pastures or Polyface Farms, regenerative agriculture people, there's like 0 carbon footprint of what they do. And in fact, it sequesters carbon. You're growing things. It's manure and cows, and it's all working together, and the chickens are free ranging. And it's like, it's nature just in a contained environment. But that's normal.
Have you mentioned the word soil, so it made me think about, have you seen the research on, I can't remember what the term is, but something like soil DNA? I guess the pioneer is, I think he's Danish, either Danish or Swedish. I think Danish. And basically, they go to these steps that are really, really, maybe not Mongolian steppes, but somewhere where you expect to find a lot of the typical fossil remains and so on. Mm-hmm. But what they now do is they just do this excavation of soil. In the same way that people who study ice, how they can bore and then they can date the various ice, right? So they do something similar where they kind of harvest tons of soil, and they're then able to isolate, DNA of mammoths. Have you seen some of this stuff?
Yes, I have.
That's mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I actually thought about inviting that guy on my show. Maybe you should have him on your show.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating to talk about. It really is so interesting when you just think about the complex interaction between everything on Earth, the plants, and that we literally need plants to create oxygen for us, and they're consuming more carbon. It's like that's one of the craziest things about Genghis Khan is when Genghis Khan lived, they killed so many people that places reforested, and they lowered the carbon footprint of Earth.
Right.
That's a real thing.
So genocide was green.
Yeah, that was green. If you looked at it, there's also like different ways. Dan Carlin on Hardcore History has the most amazing series. It's called Wrath of the Khan. I think you have to buy it on his website, but it's really cheap. It's like $1 an episode or something, and it's fucking amazing. It's amazing, and I think it's a 3-piece thing. Is it a 3-piece series? On Genghis Khan is the correct way to say it. Temujin was his real name, and what he did and like the rise.
That guy spread some genes.
Jesus Louise.
That guy was busy.
That guy get after it. I mean, it spread some genes and killed some fucking people. Killed 10% of the population of Earth.
Yeah. Was it that much?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know. It was that much.
10%.
Wow.
Yeah. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 70 million people. They don't know exactly.
There is a genocide.
Bro, you ain't kidding.
But earlier you said, how everything is connected, which leads me to a concept which I don't think I've ever discussed on my 10 shows on your podcast. This concept, consilience. Have you heard that term before?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Like being conciliatory?
No. It doesn't mean that at all.
Oh.
Consilience comes from, it doesn't come from him, but he kind of reintroduced it into the lexicon. Do you know who E.O. Wilson is?
I've heard the name.
E.O. Wilson he just recently passed away at the maybe age of 92. I just read his autobiography called Naturalist, amazing autobiography. He was a Harvard entomologist and a strong proponent of sociobiology, applying biology to studies social systems and so on. And he was part of the original culture wars where a lot of his colleagues hated him because he was arguing that biology affects human behavior. E.O. Wilson, check him out. He's unbelievable. Well, in the late 90s, he wrote a book called Consilience, Unity of Knowledge. And that became one of the foundational books in how I did my academic career, which is consilience is trying to unify disparate areas of human endeavor that you typically wouldn't think should be linked together. So you could link the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities through the consilience of evolutionary theory. Because you could study psychology using evolutionary theory. Of course, you could study biology using evolutionary theory, or you could study aesthetics, which is in the humanities, using evolutionary theory. So that became a really important concept in my own work because my brain operates as a synthetic machine. I like to synthesize across, right? So one of the reasons why I decided early on to break out of just being an academic, because I couldn't see myself as a stay-in-your-lane professor. I need to try to, right? So coming on Joe Rogan is going to allow me to share ideas and synthesize things with millions of people rather than writing another academic paper that, if I'm lucky, will be read by 50 people and cited by 12. And so...
Well, before you came on, though, when you came on, being on the show was not that problematic.
In what you mean?
Like
by
people
my
wouldn't
colleagues?
criticize being on the show because nobody even knew what it was.
Well, that's true. Once they did know what it was, people looked down on it. So I don't know if I've ever shared the story before, and even if I have, it's worth repeating. I discussed this in the Parasitic Mind. I had been invited to Stanford in 2017 to speak at their business school, a very academic, scientific talk on how to apply evolutionary theory, blah, blah, blah. So my host, who's a fellow, he's a consumer psychologist, invited me out to dinner the night before, and I think after I was going there, I think I was flying down to at the time you were in Southern California still. 2017 you were in Southern,
yeah.
And I was going to do your show, I think. So at night, during dinner, he said, "Oh, so I hear you go often on Joe Rogan's show." I said, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Yeah, well, we don't condone that at Stanford." Very kind of haughty. I said, "You don't condone what?" He goes, "Well, we don't do our research so that it could be sexy enough for it to appear so I could talk about it on Joe Rogan."
Sexy.
So I said, "Well, I don't do the research also so I can appear on Joe Rogan, but if I can publish a paper in an academic journal and then go on Joe Rogan and hopefully excite people about evolutionary psychology and psychology of decision making, isn't that better than just having my wife and mother read the paper?" And he didn't like that. He thought whereas now not that many, but I'll get a lot more professors who will write to me saying, "Can you get me on Joe Rogan?"
Well, that's good.
But that speaks to how patterns change, right?
Yeah, well, it's just, it's so easy to label somebody. It's so easy to label a platform or, like podcasting in general, that it's frivolous, especially if you live in the academic world. But it's just an opportunity to talk about stuff. And if I'm talking to someone about evolutionary psychology or if I'm talking to someone about coal mining, I just want to know what's going on.
Well, and let me tell you something. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass or be ingratiating or anything, but I bet if there was a currency, a metric to measure how much you've affected the intellectual ecosystem versus your average well-published professor, I would put my money on you. Not because you were the creator of the knowledge, but because, boy, are you the biggest disseminator of knowledge, right? So, right.
Well, I'm just lucky, right? And a big part of the luck is that I have the fortune to talk to these people. Because most people just don't have access to people like you.
Yeah.
Like if I want to sit down with a guy like you for 3 hours, like if I didn't have a podcast, that would be a tough sell. Like, hey, Gad, can you put your phone away and
Right.
just you and me just stare at each other for 3 hours and have a conversation? But this is, for whatever reason, I probably spend more time individually talking to people this way than any other way because I do so many of these things.
Do you think before you started this that there were indicators that, boy, you're such a good conversationalist, you know how to hold, or it came as a surprise to you that it would be so successful?
Oh, it's 100% surprise. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I just wanted to do it because I thought it'd be fun. That was it.
There's a chapter in the book, Life as a Playground.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Just live science is play, right?
Yeah.
What's science? It's one big puzzle
Mm-hmm.
that you're trying to identify which variable meaningfully relate to other variables.
Yeah.
So it's a form of puzzle making.
Right.
So, actually there's research that shows that if you marry someone that scores similar to you on the adult playfulness scale, I don't remember the name, right? Some people score very high on that. Probably you do. I know that I do. If you then match up with someone who scores very highly, like you do, assortatively, that's a very big predictor of you having a successful union.
That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to be with someone who hates jokes.
Especially if you're a professional comic.
And if you're funny and they're not funny, that's probably not as fun.
Right.
That's probably boring.
But what if you had to choose between the person that you're with is also very funny or at least laughs at your joke? You can only have one of the two. So she's either a positive receptacle to your humor or she goes toe-to-toe with you in being as funny. Which one would you prefer?
I'd take toe-to-toe with me as funny. Yeah, I don't need someone
You don't
to
need the
think
audience.
I'm funny.
Yeah.
I got plenty of people
Well,
that
the
come
audience.
to see my
Yeah.
I don't need,
A wife, yeah.
Yeah, like my wife doesn't have to have the same taste as me, even in me. Like I don't care. Like I don't care if you like different. Like they listen to music that I think is garbage, and I'm like, go ahead, play your music.
Care to share some of it?
No, I don't want to be mean. I mean, they listen to great stuff too. We like a lot of. They've introduced me to Taylor Swift, but my daughter's a Swiftie.
But
They play some Taylor Swift song. I'm like, this one's not bad. But the point is, it's like you don't have to like the same things as I
Right.
like. That's stupid. That's stupid.
Right.
You know, she likes football. I don't even know the rules. I don't know what's going on. It's fun to watch.
Do you seriously don't know football?
I barely know what's happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so-
barely know what's happening. And
should-
I have friends that are like Aaron Rodgers is my friend.
Is that...
I don't know what the fuck's going on.
So I hear you're
They're
a good
throwing the
something.
ball.
You throw the ball. That's
Yeah,
how-
and he's really good at that shit. He's a smart guy. He's a very interesting guy.
Speaking of athletes, last time I came on the show, I did apparently a clip went viral from our conversation where I was kind of hailing the cosmic justice of why it was important for Messi to win
Yes.
the World Cup. Remember that?
Yes, you did say that.
So listen, speaking of life as a playground and scoring high on openness and all the things that I think you do very well, and I'd like to think that I do too. About maybe a week or two after I appeared on your show last year, I get an email. Dear whatever, Professor Saad, my name is, I guess I could say his name because you're gonna know. My name is Jorge Mas. I am the majority owner of Inter Miami. I'm a fan. Whatever. I know that you have a deep appreciation for Messi. Whenever you'd like to come to a game, you'll be my personal guest.
Oh, shit.
Now, think about this. This geeky professor who could have lived his life just doing his little narrow stuff, right? I'm good in my ecosystem. A few other professors care about my work. Or go out there, grab life by
The balls.
and live it fully and connect and so on, right? So I call my wife over. I say, I'm James Bond. I mean, in what world? So in what world is it possible for, the Lebanese professor, an evolutionary theory, to get an email from the majority owner? So September 27th or 28th, I'm on a flight down to Miami. They're playing in the U.S. Open Cup. It turns out that Messi was injured, so he didn't play. I'm supposed to meet him. I bring him copies of my book signed, even the Spanish version of The Parasitic Mind, because he only reads Spanish. He ends up not being there because he's not playing and so on. He's standing right next to me, but I didn't get to meet him really. I meet Zinedine Zidane, who was the greatest French player of all time and World Cup winner, right there in the President's Lodge. David Beckham, hang out with him. Now, I'm not saying these to drop names. Oh, look, I know these cool people. But I'm saying if I didn't have that open spirit where I didn't view my world as only being restricted to the ecosystem of academia, if I didn't come on Joe Rogan that opened me up to a whole new audience, all of those people would have never heard of my work. If I only publish peer-reviewed papers rather than publishing books, which, by the way, in academia, you publish trade books, that's looked down upon. How is that looked down upon? If you publish a book that can be read by 300,000 people, how is that not better than publishing an academic paper that's read by 3 people? But that one is pure. It's academic. That other one is vulgar and popularizer.
Yeah.
It's grotesque. It's stupid.
It is stupid. And unfortunately, stupid can also be really smart. Really smart people can be stupid.
Well, George Orwell, I'm paraphrasing him, said it takes intellectuals to come up with really dumb ideas.
Well, in this country, there's a lot of examples that you could point to that would indicate that that would be correct.
You're right.
It's just, you could be really dumb and also be smart as shit in your discipline. You know, and again, it just boils down, a lot of it is male ego. That's a big part of the problem with a lot of these ideas that people hold so sacred. The fascinating one for me with you is this reluctance to accept that there's other factors for the development of a human personality,
right?
And that it's not a blank slate. Like, that seems interesting. And if I was a teacher that was teaching something contrary to that, I would want to know this.
Yeah.
And now I know that I've been teaching nonsense and I have to call like 50,000 students over the last 20 years and go, hey guys, remember that shit that I told you? Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Turns out I thought it was true. Yeah. What would you do? That's got to be horrible for them. When new information comes out that's irrefutable, some new scanning, new thing that shows that this thing that we had always held to be true, that you've taught in classes, that you've won awards for, is nonsense.
Yeah. So there's a great, so my favorite quote, and maybe Jamie could pull it out, by J.B.S. Haldane. J.B.S. Haldane was an evolutionary geneticist, but was also known for having these beautiful quotable quips. And so here, the quote in question, I have it in the last chapter of The Consuming Instinct, 2011 book. He's talking about the 4 stages that academics go through before they accept a theory. So I'm paraphrasing now what his stages are. Stage 1, oh, this is complete rubbish bullshit. Stage 2, well, this may be true, but largely unimportant. Stage 3, well, this is definitely true, but it's probably not actionable. Stage 4, oh, I always said so, right? So what happens is you go through these phases, and if you're dogged enough, as I was, then the people who laughed at you in stage 1, oh, there you go. This is worthless
4 stages
nonsense.
of acceptance.
This is worthless nonsense. This is an interesting but perverse point of view. This is true but quite unimportant. I always said so. Perfect. And I've always said
That's
that
the government's position on COVID vaccines.
That's right. That's exactly right. By the way, but here's the funny personal anecdote. I am a pathological email hoarder, meaning that I never get rid of emails because I always think, what if I ever need whatever's contained in that email?
Right.
So I have emails from people who, let's say, had taken a very negative position in stage 1. Your evolutionary psychology stuff is bullshit. I have that email. It's 2001. And I have the email from 2019 when you say, "Dear God, we would be honored if you would be the plenary speaker." I'm like, oh, but what happened to I was a bullshitter in 2001?
Oh, wow.
So you just have to be dogged. You have to collect the evidence and hopefully...
But here's my position as an outsider. How could you know? Like, why would you say it's a blank slate? How could you know? And why would you ignore all this interesting information that we now know about the role that your parents play?
Because the blank slate is very hopeful. right? Because the blanks, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Watson, the behaviorist, who said that, give me 12 children, I could turn any one of them into a doctor, into a beggar, into a lawyer, meaning that everybody is infinitely malleable. Now, that's a hopeful message if I'm a parent, right? If I create a child, you're telling me that he's got equal chance to be Michael Jordan or Lionel Messi if only I have the right schedule of reinforcement of how to hug him and when to hug him? That's hopeful. I don't want to be told that there is something innate about my child that guarantees that he will never be the next Michael Jordan. So I think the message, the blank slate message, doesn't originally start as just a quacky idea. It's a noble idea, perfectly rooted in bullshit, but it's a noble idea. Here's another example of a noble idea. Franz Boas was actually a Jewish anthropologist at Columbia University about 100 years ago, who was the one who developed cultural relativism, the idea that there are no human universals. So biology doesn't matter in explaining cultural phenomena because every culture is uniquely distinct. Now, the reason why he proposed that idea is because many nasty folks had misused biology and evolutionary theory. And therefore, by him eradicating biology from the study of anthropology, he was hopefully doing a noble thing. But you can't kill truth in the service of a goal, right? And so, but that's what, so a lot of these guys, it's not, to our earlier conversation, they're not conspiratorial in spreading bullshit. They believe that by holding those positions, they're creating the proper utopia. But it's rooted in bullshit.
The reluctance to change one's opinion is always a very unfortunate thing to witness.
I hear you. Can you think of one or two things that you remember most where you've done 180 on that you'd like to share?
I don't know if I've done real 180s.
Or a sizable shift. I
real
used to
dumb
think,
ones. Bigfoot's a real dumb one. I used to believe in Bigfoot.
But you were 8 or last Saturday?
Oh, like pretty recently, within the last 2 decades.
Oh, and what made you switch?
Talking to Bigfoot people.
And thinking and seeing that they're
yeah,
quacky.
There's something wrong with them. Unfortunately, I used to have a joke about it. Here's one thing you don't find when you go looking for Bigfoot: black people. You're more likely to find Bigfoot than you are black people looking for Bigfoot. It's all a bunch of unfuckable white dudes out camping. And there's a mystery. There's a thing that they want to believe, and there's almost no evidence. Almost no evidence. There's some weird stuff like footprints with dermal ridges, but you could fake that. It could be bullshit.
Does that apply to the other class, Loch Ness Monster also you don't believe?
Well, the Loch Ness Monster is most likely nonsense, or maybe it could be a big fish or something like that. But the actual photo of the Loch Ness Monster is a hoax that's been proven to be a hoax. They know the guy who took it. They know how he did it. He used a cardboard cutout or something like that, or some cutout. He put it in the water and then took a photo. It was bullshit. It's probably, it could be a sturgeon. It could be some large fish. I think there's a lot of theories on it, but they've done scans of the loch. They've never found anything. It's certainly not a population of them.
Right.
Whether they can stay alive for this long. They have to be breeding. Like how many, what are they eating? Like, how big is this? What are you talking about? The Bigfoot thing, I think, was real. And I think it was real in the human imagination, and it was real in terms of like modern human beings encountered these things. And it's a real animal called Gigantopithecus. And it really did exist in Asia. And if human beings were coming across the Bering Land Bridge, it's very likely that they were there too. They all existed in the same environment and in the same time period. And this fucking thing is in like Native American history. They have a large number of names for this. They don't have dragons. They don't have crazy shit that doesn't exist. They have a myth of this gigantic hairy ape that lives in the woods, and I think it did. I think it did probably until, who knows how many thousands and thousands of years ago. But the idea of one being around today, almost no evidence, almost nothing. Just visual bullshit, blurry bullshit, footprints that maybe, I don't know, you could fake that. You could fake a footprint. It's not a fucking fake Ferrari. It's not like complicated to fake a footprint. You don't understand about the amount of weight that has to be. Says who? Says who? Says you? Says you, a guy who wants to believe in Bigfoot so bad.
Right.
They want to believe so bad. It is a religion. It's a
So
religion.
what do you think is the psychological mechanism that causes them to want to? It's because there is kind of a mystery and awe to things that are out there that we can't explain.
Here's the thing: if Bigfoot was real, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting as a killer whale. Not nearly as interesting. If Bigfoot is just this big, stupid monkey that lives in the woods and just shits all over himself and fucking eats campers, that wouldn't be nearly as interesting as this super intelligent creature that lives in the water that saves people. Saves people.
You know, before we were outside, I was talking to some of your crew, and I was telling them that someone had asked me, "Oh, do you?" Actually, it was the border agent as I was coming through to Austin. He asked, "Why am I coming?" I said, "Oh, I'm coming to do your show." He says, "Oh, do you get like a list of things that you talk about?" I said, "Oh, it's exactly the opposite of that." And so to that point, I wouldn't have ever, I didn't have in my bingo card the defecation of Bigfoot in forests.
Yeah, like, what is he doing up there, you stinky bitch? Like, come on. The idea that no one has taken real good footage in this day and age with the amount of hikers and campers and people that are in the woods and people that are into photography and nature photography and trail cameras. Trail cameras are everywhere. They're over water holes. They're everywhere.
So what's the mechanism by which, I mean, you know, you listed the name of the animal that you think...
Gigantopithecus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you obviously have a lot of these tidbit information. Are you a voracious reader, or how do you get your sources of information?
Well, I've read an embarrassing amount of books on Bigfoot.
No,
Yeah.
but in general.
But
because
in general, a lot of audiobooks.
Oh, you do a lot of audio? Okay.
The best way for me to, like, I can do that while I'm working out. I could do that while I'm in the sauna. I could do that when I'm in the car.
Okay.
So that, to me, is like, that's a couple of hours of taking in information.
Beautiful.
Where I would just ordinarily just like lifting weights.
But you don't love the feeling of grabbing a book?
I do,
Okay.
but I'm also so busy that to me it's like the best way to consume ideas. I feel like reading a book is 100%, listening to an audiobook is 80 to 90%.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's the same thing.
It's
too easy to gloss over.
I've never audio booked a book. I've only read. I haven't even read a electronic book.
Really?
I love.
You like paper?
I love paper.
Yeah.
I'm a pathological book hoarder.
Do you write on paper or do you type it out?
I type it out.
You type
So now I type. Sometimes I'll take little notes. I'm sitting at the cafe. I have an idea for something I want to do, so I'll write it, and then But if I'm writing a book, it's always on the computer. There's no written anymore. And I've noticed that my penmanship has really gotten worse. I don't know if...
Oh, mine's dog shit.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. It's like chicken shit. But I'm a voracious reader, and one of the things that stresses me the most is in my personal library, in my study, I've got, literally hundreds and hundreds of books. And I will often walk in there and say, will I ever have time to read? So I have probably 600 books that I've yet to read. And each of those books has so much information that if I were to read all those books, boy, I would be an even more exciting guest on the Joe Rogan show. No, what I mean by that is that there's so much. The more you know, the more you realize truly how little you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so I say, oh my God, here's a biography on. So I just bought a biography on the taxonomist who created the system of how to label animal species. He's a Swedish taxonomist, right? Now that sounds very esoteric and specific, but I'm sure there is this incredible information that I can glean in that book, which today I don't have that knowledge in my brain. So to all people who are listening, read. There is nothing more. Number one predictor of your child's success is how many books were in the home of the parents.
Really?
Okay. I mean, I don't know if it's number one, but certainly a highly predictive one. So reading... Elon Musk, you probably know this, when he came to, I think from South Africa to Canada, he came with a luggage of books. He's a voracious reader, right? Now, that doesn't mean that he became who he became only because he read, but it's very hard to have an interesting person who's not very knowledgeable about many things. And that's why one of the things that's been very difficult with my children is I see them doing the scrolling, and it drives me crazy because I haven't been able to instill that reflex of just saying, there is nothing I'd rather do right now than go sit somewhere and immerse myself in a book. They don't have that reflex.
Yeah, that is a problem with electronics because it does hijack your reward system. It hijacks your attention span. It hijacks your brain. And it's hard because kids are growing up in this environment. It's a different environment. And I have two ways of looking at it. I have one way of looking at it where you have to kind of set an example. And I'm not the best at that. I like to look at my phone. Like just to put your phone away and put work away. Don't be responding to emails. Just put it away and focus. I think we all should do that. But we are all also living in this new world, and that is not going to change. And I think that's the same as when people are like, don't get in the car, let's walk. Like, okay, that's good for a little while, but now guess what, Martha? Everyone has cars. Let's get a fucking car. I'm not walking to New York. What are you talking about? I'm not getting in this stupid wagon and getting pulled by a horse. This is dumb. They have cars now.
Right.
I think we're going to get to a point where avoiding some interaction with other human beings, it's going to be constant. And it's going to be more invasive than it is now. These are steps that our species is taking in its integration with technology that seem to be unstoppable. Yeah. And to isolate yourself and move to the woods in a cabin, that's one way to do it. But
no, but the hygiene or the discipline of saying, I'm now focused, I'm not... I mean, I know the research findings on this, and yet I always find myself going into my phone and then stopping myself. So in writing,
you always stop yourself?
I mean, I don't. I
stop myself 3 out of 10 times. Especially if I can come up with some reason. Oh, I'm going to go over my notes. You know?
Yeah. But so what is the pull in your case? Is it scrolling through the Twitter?
Well, just nonsense. Looking at nonsense on Instagram. And a lot of it is horrible because I have this fucking thing that I'm doing with Tom Segura where we send each other the worst things we find every day.
Like an animal
and animal attacks. This one dude fucking stole a cop car, was in a high-speed chase in Mexico with no tires, just flames coming out of the bottom of his car. Wild shit. A lot of people falling off buildings.
Why?
We just have been doing this to each other for...
Just like out of a
How many months has it been now? It's been like...
It's like a morbid thing?
Yeah. Just freaking each other out every day. So now the algorithm knows that I'm fucked up. So the algorithm is only showing me like motorcycle accidents and just the wildest shit that you shouldn't be looking at. I get so many of those videos that show up on my feed where it tells you, are you sure you want to look at this?
Oh, boy.
You know, where it's blurry and you have to click again to look at it?
I've had maybe twice that.
Really?
Yeah, but here's the thing. So I'm interested in the AI algorithm that generates those because oftentimes it'll put things in my feed that I truly think, I don't know how it could have found out that I like the stuff because there is no signature electronically of me having searched something. Let's say 3-piece wool suits.
Right.
Okay, I love that look. And so now I'll see 1,000 guys wearing these gorgeous Italian, right? But other times it presents stuff to me that makes no sense, that it almost seems as though I'm into gay sauna guys. No, but I mean, I'm being serious. Like it's kind of fitness, which of course I'm into, having lost a lot of weight, but it almost seems homoerotic, where it's always these guys that are, and so as I'm going at this, my wife will say, what are you looking at? I say, well, I'm not sure I want to show you. And then it's like literally 17 super muscular guys, but there's nothing that I've done that should suggest that it should recognize that in me. How do you explain that, Dr. Joe?
Well, they took a chance and they missed.
Okay.
You know, the data's not complete. Okay. You know, you're interested in some things but that's interesting. Like any perception of men, like with a 6-pack, like looking good and oiled up, that's homoerotic, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because a woman with a beautiful body is not considered homoerotic at all.
Yeah.
Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
It is odd.
It is.
But it's
odd.
like, oh, I don't even want to look at these fucking good-looking guys.
No,
what are you, gay?
No, but just I'm someone who actually is very easy in complimenting other men. So that's not that wasn't.
No, but it is. It's considered homoerotic. That's the problem.
Well, the positions that they're taking doesn't seem like it was fitness. It seemed like it was a bit kind of come hither. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of girls that do that too, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of girls that take these sexy lifting weights poses, but you don't think of them as homoerotic.
But they're appealing to the male gaze in that case. And
we assume that the female. So the
male,
way the men are posing,
they're appealing to men because men are titillated by visual stimuli, not women, right? So very few women.
I think women say that to ugly dudes. Women aren't even visual. Don't worry about it.
Well, they're not as visual. Can we?
But
can
they're
we agree on
definitely
that?
visual.
Of course.
When a girl sees like Tatum O'Neal with his shirt off, and they go, "Ooh."
Yeah. No, of
Yeah.
course.
That's real too.
But how
But-
many strip bars are out there targeting female patrons?
Oh yeah, there's a big discrepancy.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, it's not equivalent. I'm not saying that. Yeah. Outright. But it's just funny that one is homoerotic.
Right.
You know, it's just. But then there's also ones where it's like, okay, who are you appealing to? Because does a girl really want to see you sit like this? Like, this is weird.
Right.
This is a weird pose for a regular dude.
But by the way, the inability to recognize some of these dynamics is what causes some men to send dick pics to women, right? Because they think that the same visual stimuli that would titillate them is exactly what would titillate women.
Right.
So it's lack of theory of mind. Whereas, and so a lot of men will say, oh, I've got a good morphology here. I think she'd be impressed by that. And she gets repulsed by it. And because he doesn't have intersex theory of mind.
Right. Interesting.
Evolutionary psychology, it's where it's at.
Well, how much is it affected by technology?
What is
how much of when you think of evolutionary psychology and you think of us as an evolving species that's integrating with its environment and its environment radically changes?
So
like
the most obvious answer to that would be internet pornographic addiction, which almost exclusively afflicts men, right? For very obvious reasons, because what's happening with the internet delivery system is it's exactly catering to men's evolved penchant for sexual variety, right? I can keep flipping through different porn clips without ever repeating the same one. Well, it doesn't take much for that stimulus to then hijack my brain. So when I, for example, explain to people about the evolutionary roots of pornography, that doesn't mean that men have evolved a gene for pornography, right? Because obviously there was no pornography in the ancestral environment. But what it means is that those mechanisms that evolved for mating are then hijacked, usurped by pornography. So I think the most obvious one would be internet pornography.
I think the next stage of that is even more terrifying. I think there's going to be some sort of virtual element. Meaning virtual sex. You're going to be able to actually have like a sexual experience virtually.
But haptically, how do you do it?
I think they're going to do it with some sort of an interface.
Okay.
You know, like when you're seeing these first patients of Neuralink, like this one guy who can now amazingly operate a computer, play games, move his cursor, click on things. I mean, it's incredible. And they think he's going to be able to communicate through this thing like at the speed of a carnival barker. That's how he's going to be able to use this.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So I was giving a talk on global Jew hatred in Montreal at this event, and a guy came up to me to introduce himself, and he's a neurosurgeon, and he said that he was part of the team that was choosing the first Neuralink patient that you just mentioned.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So this is patient number one, right?
Yeah.
And it's been successful.
Yeah.
And they believe that ultimately they'll be able to restore blindness. They'll be able to restore movement to people. There's going to be a lot of like wild things that this technology, if it can continue to progress, is going to be capable of doing. And at one point in time, I've got to imagine it's got to be able to create an artificial reality simulator that you just immerse yourself in. Whether it takes 10 years to do that or 50 or 100, in the future, they're going to have something that, forget about porn. Like, forget about, like, actually going on an adventurous life. Why would you do that when you can have all of the trappings of being a wizard in a fucking dungeon game? You could just play.
Right.
You just live your life in this world that doesn't exist. Get sexual pleasure, get satisfaction, eat food. And all you do when you awake is you eat food, go to sleep, wake up, and do it again.
Oh boy, that's a dire world.
It's the Matrix.
It's the Matrix.
It really is the Matrix. And I feel like there's no way to stop it. I feel like if things keep going in the way they're going, Do we have regulations to keep a simulated universe from appearing? We don't have any regulations. If somebody wanted to create, if they were so smart that they created a simulated universe that you could participate in, and they could say, God, you could be whoever you want. You want to go to ancient Egypt in 2000 BC and see what was cracking? What was going on down there?
Right.
What did that look like? When the height of the pyramids, what the fuck did that look like? You wouldn't do that? Of course you would do that. Everybody would do that. And if it was like harmless, you couldn't get hurt, you couldn't get injured, you're in God mode everywhere you go. If you die, you just wake up and do it all over again, and you keep doing it.
I mean, not to rain on that Matrix parade, but books, in a sense, do exactly that, right?
No, they don't.
You want it
You
to be
stop
more.
you shut your mouth. We're talking about transporting you to the fucking dinosaur times, Gad. We're talking about you running around watching raptors tear apart a brontosaurus.
Okay.
It's indistinguishable from reality.
I see.
Indistinguishable.
I see.
Looks like it's happening right in front of you. That's all everyone's going to be doing.
Oh boy.
Those books are going to rot. Those books are going to be covered in dust. You're going to do it one time, and it'll get to the point. See, it's sort of like VR. If you do VR now, it's really cool. It's kind of fun. It's like, wow, this game's nuts.
I've tried the boxing one.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
It's a good workout.
Yeah.
The boxing is a really good workout because, you really do. It really is like hard shadow boxing.
Yeah.
Because you have to move a lot. And my feet were hurting. I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. But that's very crude in comparison to what's coming. That is like Pong. Remember Pong?
Yeah.
You're older than me.
Yeah,
you know what the fuck I'm talking
of course.
about. That game was amazing.
Arati, what's it called?
Atari.
Atari.
Yeah. Remember when that happened?
Yeah.
We were like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
We are playing a video. We're of that age. Like, we went through the whole thing. We went through VCRs. We went through answering machines.
So my knowledge of video games stopped and peaked 1981 with Galaga. Do you know Galaga?
Oh, yeah.
So
Galaga
I
awesome.
was like a champion in Galaga, but that's the
Damn.
end of my knowledge. So like right now I see my son interact with things and he tries to bring me in, and I just feel like I don't have the bandwidth to do anything that he's doing.
It will eat your life. It will eat your life. It will eat your life. It's too fun. They're too good. These games are so good now. They're so immersive.
So you're a gamer?
No, I don't do them because
Okay.
they're too good.
Oh, right.
No, I'm scared. They're too fun. They're too fun. And I have too many friends that will play video games till like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
And they're our age.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do they navigate through family life and all
A
that?
lot of them don't. But, some of them are younger. The younger guys, they're all playing. What does Shane play? Will they play Call of Duty?
Shane's big into Madden, and he likes the UFC game. He also plays some like Command and Conquer style because he's big into military history.
Oh,
He
right.
likes some of that stuff too.
So they're playing these fucking insanely immersive games. And these games are so good. They're so good now. The graphics are so incredible.
Wow.
They're so fun. They're so exciting. They
So-
just have it geared up to like constant excitement.
So the only one that interested me in the ones that my son showed me, I really know very little about this, is the sniper games.
Oh, you like to be a little sneaky.
No, there's something very
Sniper.
very beautiful about sort of steadying yourself and then getting that scope. And so I respect the guys who do that in real life. And so I try to do it, but there was too much hand-eye coordination of different things. So I didn't do too well. But
Well, you
that one-
gotta that controller
Yeah.
becomes you.
Yeah, right.
It becomes you.
So Richard Dawkins talks about that being an extended phenotype. Right.
Those guys that are really good at that, that's the ones that the military wants. They want those guys to operate drones.
Oh, right.
That's what I would want. Until AI does it. AI is going to do a way better job.
Right.
Did you see the thing that we had Mike Baker on? He was explaining to us yesterday that they have dogfights they're doing now where AI-controlled jets are competing against jets flown by the best pilots, and the AI jets are winning 100% of the time.
Wow. Incredible. So
That's fucking terrifying.
So speaking of AI, I was in the early, wave of studying AI. So my undergrad is in mathematics, computer science, and so as part of my computer science degree, I had taken in some AI stuff course with Monty Newborn. I think, or New, I can't remember his exact name. He was part of the team of Deep Blue, which, do you know what Deep Blue is? So that was the AI system that was being built to play against the grand chess masters. And at the time, sometimes this one would win, sometimes this one would win, oftentimes it would be ties. And so we had learned how to program the search algorithms that would allow you to go through a decision tree of chess without having to exhaustively go through the entire tree, because the entire tree is something like 10 to the 100 different nodes. It would take more than the entire history of the universe to go through it. So you have to know how to prune the tree. Do you follow what I mean?
Yes.
So that way, if I better not waste time going down here, so just cut it off, that reduces the search space. And so I had been exposed to some of the earliest advances in my formal education in AI. But frankly, 40 years later, notwithstanding all of the advances, I would have thought there would have been even more AI applications than what we currently have. In other words, I thought it would be, we've underperformed what I thought we would have reached. So for example, in medical diagnostics, why aren't there more AI systems that are being used instead of actual, human doctors? Don't you think? Because medical diagnostics is just the collation of tons of information so that you're able to, it's a structured problem, right? It has here are all the symptoms. I can search through the whole database and come up with what is the likely disease much more quickly and probably more accurately than any human physician. And yet, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think they're used as much as you would have thought they should be.
Yeah, I don't think they are, but I think people have been diagnosed with things from
Is that right?
From artificial intelligence now.
In what?
Didn't someone put a bunch of their data into ChatGPT?
I know for sure a story went around about like a mom that couldn't get a good answer and put
Yes.
the info in there and got like a
Oh,
correct
is that right?
diagnosis really quickly. But that's like one anecdote I think that went around.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but you would imagine that at a certain point in time, you would get all of the data on all medical interventions, all medications that are good, effective for this, that, or the other thing, all issues that could lead to a genetic propensity towards this, that, or the other thing, and you would have it all in some sort of a database.
Right.
If you could have a computer that's far smarter than a human being process that and instantaneously know, instead of having some guy that has to go back to like what he learned when he was in grad school, and you're way better off.
So I think in some areas, and I could be misspeaking, so take this with a bit of a grain of salt, but I think in radiology is one of the areas where now AI systems are almost going to render the human radiologist obsolete, because it's pattern recognition, right? I'm looking at an image, and then I have to read that image to decide whether does it look like this area is a bit gray, so it looks like there could be a tumor. Well, it turns out I think that the AI systems are better able to detect most of these things than humans. So, so I actually spoke to a radiologist cousin of mine, and he didn't think that they would become obsolete anytime soon. Him meaning that humans would, the human radiologists would still have something to input. But it seems to me that in fields in medicine where it's largely driven by pattern recognition is where AI is going to make the most headways, I think.
That's interesting. I'm really fascinated to see what the end of this looks like, because I think it's going to come real quick. I think the use of AI is now something we're just waking up to, in terms of like the general population is super aware of AI now for the first time. It was like a science fiction thing just 20 years ago.
Right.
That the possibility of it was science fiction 20 years ago, but the probability of it right now is like a fucking freight train that's headed over a cliff. It's like no one's hitting the brakes on this at all. And what does this look like?
So have you had guests that are both, you really need to be deathly afraid of AI, versus those who say it's completely overblown?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
And what is the evidence leaning to which camp? I don't know much of the
Well, the
argument.
evidence is really in who the fuck knows.
Okay.
That's the what is actually going to happen is who the fuck knows, because I think it's going to be more bizarre than we could ever imagine. I think what we're giving birth to collectively as a society is going to be more bizarre than anything we could ever imagine, because it's going to be smarter than us by a lot, and it's going to be able to make smarter versions of it. It's going to be able to harness energy in a way that we couldn't ever possibly fathom. We couldn't think it up. And it's going to have sentience. It's going to have the ability to make decisions. It's a life form. And we're giving birth to it. We're giving birth to some godlike life form that has an unstoppable potential for technological superiority over the human race.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's going to be so superior. And if we're programming into it certain behavior characteristics or certain imperatives, it doesn't have morals. It doesn't have. It's just gonna. The whole idea behind it is nuts.
So of all the courses that I've ever taken in my life, I spent many years in university. The course that blew me the most, blew my mind, was a course called Formal Languages, which was about formal languages is Turing machines. And so I don't know if do you know Turing?
Yeah, the Turing test.
So the Turing test, of course. So Alan Turing, if you delve into his actual, material, you're blown away that a human mind can think at that level. And I'm saying this as someone who spent my entire career in academia, so I've met a lot of really, really brilliant people. But it's almost metaphysical, the kind of depth that his intellect went to. So the only other guy that I could think of sort of contemporary guys would be Gödel. I don't know if you know. Do you know? So are you familiar with?
Yeah, Gödel's the guy who came up with a functional diagram of how you could make a time machine.
Oh, did he?
Kurt Gödel?
Kurt Gödel,
the mathematician?
Yeah, the mathematician, exactly.
Yeah.
So he was, I don't know if you know this story. I talk about it in this book, in the Happiness book. At one point, I'm talking about the importance of going for walks and just go for a walk and talk and so on. And I said, well, Einstein, so both Einstein and Gödel were together at the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton. And later in his career, Einstein was older than Gödel. Later in his career, Einstein said that the only reason that he would go into the office was because he was excited to go on these long walks with Gödel and just have these chats. So imagine being a fly on the wall, sitting as Gödel and Einstein are having these conversations. So I just finished reading Gödel's biography, and it was very interesting because here's this unbelievable mind. You know what he died of?
What?
Because it's going to speak to the opposite side of the mind. He was convinced that there were people trying to poison him. So he would use his wife as the food tester.
Oh, Jesus.
And she was committed to hospital with some disease, whatever, so she could no longer serve as his food tester. So he died of starvation.
Oh, my God.
So now imagine Gödel is both the guy who could think in ways that are unimaginable to us and is also the guy whose mind was parasitized by these conspiratorial ideas.
Wow. He was 65 pounds when he died of malnutrition.
Isn't that phenomenal?
Wow. Caused by a personality disturbance. Wow.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Assassination of his close friend. He developed an obsessive fear of being poisoned.
Oh, I just bought a book on the murder of Professor Schlick, who was the guy who started the Vienna Circle.
And why did they poison him?
No, they shot him.
They
shot him, yeah.
So he was worried about being poisoned because his friend got shot.
So I don't know where the genesis of his paranoia came from, but my point is that in that same mind
Right.
were these two sides. So he developed what's called the incompleteness theorem. So there are some things within any axiomatic system in mathematics that you could never be able to prove within that system. I mean, it's really at the level. It's like godly. It's just unbelievable, especially if I was in mathematics. To be able to think at that level is unimaginable how deep it is, and yet you think people are going to poison you, and you're willing to starve to death. That's the mystery of the human mind.
Jamie, see if you can find what his theory on time travel was.
Just looking that up, it postulated he was like wondering if
I think it has to be like the size of a solar system.
he was talking about the way the solar system worked in relativity, which was Einstein's theory. Would that allow time travel. Here it goes. Rotating universe.
Yeah. How a rotating universe makes time travel possible. So he had this idea, but I'm going to butcher it unless I can actually read it.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I was
mean,
trying to get to it.
some of this stuff is so difficult to grasp.
Right. It is.
There you go. Something like that.
Okay, here it is. Gödel found that if you follow a particular path in this rotating universe, you can end up in your own past. You'd have to travel incredibly far, billions of light years long to do it, but it can be done. As you travel, you would get caught up in the rotation of the universe. That isn't just a rotation of the stuff in the cosmos, but of both space and time themselves. In essence, the rotation of the universe would so strongly alter your potential paths forward that those paths loop back around to where you started.
I have no idea what that means.
Holy shit.
I mean, you know, Richard Feynman, you know who that is, Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize winner in physics? He was a pioneer in quantum mechanics. He said, if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics. It's the same thing for me with this kind of stuff. I read it and
It's impossible
Yeah.
for my stupid brain.
I don't think
But
it's stupid
just
brain. It's so esoteric.
It is very, very esoteric. But listen to this. If you would set off on your journey and never travel faster than the speed of light, and you would find yourself back where you started, but in your own past. What? The possibility of backwards time travel creates paradoxes and violates our understanding of causality. Thankfully, all observations indicate that the universe is not rotating, so we are protected from Gödel's problem of backward time travel, but it remains to this day a mystery why general relativity is okay with this seemingly impossible phenomenon. Gödel used the example of the rotating universe to argue that general relativity is incomplete, and he may yet be right.
I don't know what to add to that.
If you give people the opportunity to go back in time, oh my God, that would be ridiculous.
So but speaking of
You
this,
never know.
I've actually played this game, a version of this game where I ask people if you could invite 10 historical people to your dinner party, who would they be? So maybe I can ask you that. You don't have to list 10. Can you off the top of your head, can you list a few that would have to be at the Joe Rogan barbecue? I could tell you who's my number one.
Who?
Leonardo da Vinci. I just finished a biography on him.
Do you speak Italian?
I don't. I speak fake Italian. I just add a.
Who knows what their Italian was?
Yeah, right.
They all had dialects. Like my grandparents spoke in dialects.
By
It's
the way-
weird Italian.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I could link my love for Leonardo da Vinci with the earlier concept of consilience that we talked about. Maybe you can see how, because Leonardo da Vinci, by definition, is the Renaissance man, right? He is the ultimate polymath. He's an anatomist and a painter and an engineer and a futurist and a sculptor, right? He's a man of all and does them all at very high proficiency, and he's able to link all these things, right? So he studies the anatomy of the body in his art. So he's now linking anatomy with art. So that's what consilience is. So to me, Leonardo da Vinci is the ultimate intellectual man because he can do it all. He can link different things. So he would be on my list. Who would be arguably your top guy?
Well, it's one night, right?
One night.
You got to bring Hunter Thompson.
Who the hell's that?
Hunter S. Thompson?
Who's that?
Really?
Hunter S.
You never heard of Hunter S. Thompson?
No.
The journalist? Never
Tell me
heard of
more.
him? You never heard of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? You never heard of this guy?
Maybe.
That's crazy. I can't believe you've never heard of Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson is an American writer, and he
What's his most
wrote on
famous
a lot.
thing?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is the one they made into a Johnny Depp movie. It was a crazy. It really started off. The assignment was he was supposed to write about, I think it was motorcycle racing in Las Vegas. He gets this contract to write this article, and he goes there, and instead it's this LSD entrenched.
You're picking this guy
psychotic
over
episode.
Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Da Vinci?
He said brilliant things, man. If you read his work was brilliant. It was brilliant. He was out of his fucking mind. I mean, he was out of his fucking mind, doing acid, shooting windows. He was crazy. There's a video of him having a shootout with his neighbors in Colorado. They were shooting at each other. It was crazy. Like, legitimately, it killed himself.
That
too.
goes with your
Himself.
morbid Instagram things with your friend.
No, it doesn't necessarily, because I think if I could catch him when he was young, I bet he'd been a fascinating guy to talk to. I just think you can't drink that hard for that long. You just deteriorate, and things go sideways mentally. It's just very, very, very bad for you. You're poisoning yourself every day with Coke, and you're poisoning yourself every day with whiskey. And that's this guy. There's a video of us reading Hunter S. Thompson's list of what this journalist saw him do in a day. This journalist came to Woody Creek, Colorado, where he lived, and us talking about it made its way into a song. Who was that band that did that? So it's like a techno dance song.
Wow.
That's all about Hunter S. Thompson's list
when
of
was
stuff
this?
he did.
Like when were you reading that? Like
That was a few years back.
Okay.
It was me and Greg Fitzsimmons were reading it. We were like,
Okay.
this is the craziest thing. Listen to the Beardy Man.
featuring Joe Rogan. Okay.
Can we play this? That's ridiculous. It's my own words.
Oh, in terms of copyright?
What happens when you play it? What do you hear? Just us saying it.
So I know what you hear.
Okay, so it's the problem is the music.
I have to cut it out of the show is the problem.
Okay. See if you can find the actual clip of me and Greg talking about it. There's probably a clip of it. But it was, it's such a ridiculous, amount of substances he's consuming in a day. It's fucking insane. Like, he was insane.
So what makes him interesting is that he's insane and he consumes a lot of alcohol and drugs.
No,
Has it been 5 years?
he's a brilliant guy. Like, the things that he said were brilliant.
Daily routine, 3 p.m., rise.
Put music on. That's coming.
Okay. This is he woke up at 3 p.m. and he like starts his day with whiskey and cocaine. It's like he's a fucking animal, man. He's an animal. But he was also a brilliant writer, man. He had an amazing insight, and he's a guy that sort of was soured by the shift from the 1960s to the 1970s, and like what happened in this country and how weird things.
So you
got
could have
after
had
the
a chat. I
Vietnam
mean, he
War.
only died recently, right?
Yeah, he died quite a while ago. He committed suicide at least 10 years ago, right?
Okay, but I mean, technically you could have met him.
Could have. Yeah,
Ah.
would have been possible. But even then, it was like the end of his...
Okay.
He wasn't the same guy. He wasn't the same guy as he was.
50, another glass of Chivas, another Dunhill. Here's his daily routine. 3 p.m., rise. 3:05, Chivas Regal with morning papers. Smokes Dunhills. 3:45, cocaine. 3:50, another glass of Chivas, another Dunhill. 4:05 p.m., by the way, first cup of coffee and a Dunhill. 4:15, cocaine. 4:16, orange juice and another Dunhill. 4:30, cocaine. 4:54, cocaine. 5:05, cocaine. 5:11, coffee, Dunhills. 5:30, get more ice in the Chivas. Cocaine at 5:45. 6 o'clock, smoking grass to take the edge off the day. 7 p.m.
The day, 3 hours into it.
3 hours in, lit. 7:05, Woody Creek Tavern for lunch. Heineken, 2 margaritas, coleslaw, a taco salad, double order of fried onion rings, carrot cake, ice cream, a bean fritter, Dunhills, another Heineken, cocaine. And for the rest of the ride home, a snow cone, a glass of shredded ice, which is poured over 4 jiggers of Chivas. Okay, so the snow cone is Chivas. Okay, 9 p.m. Start snorting cocaine seriously, it says. 10 p.m. Drops acid. 11 p.m. Chartreuse, I don't know what that is. Cocaine and grass. 11:30, cocaine, etc., etc. 12, midnight. Hunter S. Thompson is ready to write.
Wow.
That's when he sits down to write. 12:05 to 6 a.m. He writes. Chartreuse, cocaine, grass, Chivas, coffee, Heineken, clove cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, gin, continuous pornographic movies. 6 a.m. In the hot tub with champagne, Dove bars, fettuccine Alfredo. 8 a.m. Halcyon, which is a sleeping pill. 8:20, sleep. So he would take a sleeping pill at 8:20 in the morning after riding it hard.
What I love it.
Wow.
Now, if his writing sucked, that's crazy.
But
his writing was
what was
amazing.
he wrote? He was
Well,
a fiction
the first
writer.
no, it was he came up with a kind of journalism that was like journalism mixed with fiction, and he called it like gonzo journalism. Like where
Oh, I
some
know
of the
that.
things-
That's him. Okay,
That's him.
That's okay. I
And
got it.
The way he would write would be like over the top ridiculous to the point where he thought everybody knew he was joking, but it was mixed up in like
Right.
also real stuff like Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. You know, he was on the campaign trail and he spread a rumor about this guy who was a candidate for president being a drug addict on this exotic Brazilian drug ibogaine. And so people started believing it. The guy started having a mental breakdown, and he was on the Dick Cavett show, and he admitted to doing this.
Wow.
He admitted to spreading the rumor. He's like,
Well, you made it all out. I couldn't believe that people really believed that Muskie was eating Ibogaine. I never said he was. I said there was a rumor in Milwaukee that he was, which was true. And I started the rumor in Milwaukee.
He affected the campaign. It affected.
I'm assuming he wasn't married. He wasn't married. Was he married?
he was married,
Oh, he was
yeah.
Okay, because all that cocaine and stuff might get into the.
Well, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do in this world. I don't
right,
know.
fair enough.
Obviously, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But he was a fucking maniac. He was a like complete maniac. But especially in his younger days, like Hell's Angels is an amazing book. It's crazy. That's a crazy book. He was embedded with the Hell's Angels.
Wow.
And wrote this book, and they were real mad at him afterwards. And it's a crazy.
Oh, I know where I know him from. I think I read Tucker Carlson's biography because the guy who wrote it came on my show, so I read it in preparation, and I think Tucker Carlson refers to him. That's where I learned the term gonzo journalism, I think.
Probably. I think doesn't Tucker have like a Hunter S. Thompson story?
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because when you said Hell's Angels, I know that Tucker had been invited to go give a talk with the Hell's Angels where he referenced some, and I think it's this guy. So now I'm linking what
That
you're
makes
talking
sense.
about. Yeah.
That makes sense. I feel like I don't know the story, but I think Tucker has a Hunter S. Thompson story, like he knew him. Oh, I feel like I've known Hunter S. Thompson for most of my
There you
life.
go.
I first encountered him in 1981 when I was 12. Tucker Carlson. Wow.
Jamie, would we say that out of my 10 appearances on the show, this has been the most number of times that you've come in with some truth? I'm going to say yes.
Damn. Dropping bombs.
Dropping
I don't have
bombs.
any research on the number of pull-ups I've done.
Yeah, you're obsessed with numbers.
I'm an academic.
Yeah.
We quantify things.
It makes sense. But
Yeah.
in this world, that can be problematic. I don't know if you know that math is racist.
I do. By the way, 7 or 8 years ago, you could pull it up. Jamie can pull it up. I did a satirical clip where I introduced a new field that I was coining as social justice mathematics. And I went through all of these mathematical properties and said how we should get rid of them. Like irrational numbers should not exist because they marginalize mental illness, whatever. And I just went through the whole list. It became a big hit amongst the crowd of mathematicians, which is kind of a geeky crowd. But 7, 8 years later, reality caught up with my prophetic satire. Now it is literally the case that there is a field called sort of social justice mathematics where you talk about math being racist. So
There's a lot of grifters in this world, kids, and there's a lot of people that believe things if left unchallenged and those things become doctrine, they're a real problem because they're not based in logic. They're just based in nonsense. They're based in occult-like thinking. That is, we're very susceptible to cult-like thinking.
yeah, I watched yesterday on my way to Austin a documentary 3-part series on these. I think it's called Ivy Ridge School. Have you heard of it?
Ivy Ridge School.
It was in Ogdenburg or something in upstate New York. They had a whole bunch of those schools where they would take kids, many of whom were not delinquents really, but they would convince their parents, because you mentioned cult, so this was kind of a cult situation. They would convince their parents that they need to send them to these boarding schools in order to, provide them with structure and discipline so that they can
Get their life together.
get their life together. Even though many of them, had committed very, very minor. In fact, they were caught once with marijuana. These were not like, dropping acid all day long. And the things that they would do to them in these schools is straight out of, the worst Soviet gulags you could think of. And they're throughout the United States. And it's a form of cult indoctrination where you're doing cult indoctrination at two levels, to the captives in the schools, but you also have to convince the parents that they're doing the right thing by sending their kids there. It's unbelievable. You should watch this documentary. It behooves you to imagine that in the 21st century in the United States, these things can occur, but it really does. Oh, there you go. Exactly. There you go.
Netflix came out 2
That's
months ago.
crazy.
It's You're not allowed to have eye contact with another student. You're not allowed to smile. You're not allowed to look out the window. You're not allowed to speak to anyone. You just sit in front of a computer and you just do these.
Oh my God, that's
and
crazy.
they were in there for like 28 months. Then they gave them degrees, diplomas, high school diplomas that were fraudulent. So imagine you're sent there. And by the way, in some cases, they would come and kidnap you out of your parents' home because they knew that the kid would be resistant to leave. They said, no, it's completely legal. So like 2 goons would come, take your child, take them to upstate New York. The kid has no idea why I'm there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's very powerful. So, and hence that's why parasitic thinking, right? Our ability to be parasitized is infinite.
That is crazy. That story's crazy.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
Oh my God.
So how old are your kids now? Speaking of kids, are they past the age where you have any influence on them? They think you're no longer the hero, you've become a zero? Because my children are entering a bit that stage. The teenage
That's
stage.
to be expected, and they're correct. They find flaws in your game. Yeah. It's fascinating to watch little minds develop their view of the world. And if there's anything that I've ever done like a real 180 on, is I developed this weird way of looking at people, and it made me much more empathetic, where I don't think of people as just you at age, whatever you are. You at age 49, you at age 30. I think of everybody as babies. I think of everybody as that you used to be a little baby.
Right.
And a bunch of shit went terribly wrong.
Right.
And now here we are together in this unfortunate situation. And where I used to just think, like, if I saw some guy and he was drunk and he's 35 years old, some asshole, it's like, he's just an asshole. This guy's an asshole. He's rude to people. What happened to that guy?
Yeah.
How did he get to that spot? And I started thinking about people like little babies. Little babies that just got a bunch of bad things
happen,
bad people and bad environments. And
But that's removing people's personal agency. That you're.
It's definitely removing it a little, which is also bullshit.
Yeah.
Because you do have personal agency, but you don't have 100%.
So I see.
There's certain landscapes that are untraversable.
I actually faced what you faced with a 35-year-old. I faced something similar on my daily walk with my wife to the coffee shop and back. There's a gentleman that stands outside this, kind of shishi artisanal butcher place in our neighborhood, and he is soliciting money every day, all day. Okay, he doesn't look as though he's mentally ill. He doesn't look completely destitute, but he stands there every day. And so now I know I just say hello to him just to recognize him. And you could tell that it means a lot to him. Hi, how are you? How you doing? And I've struggled with whether it would be appropriate for me or not to just strike up a conversation out of just a human interest in knowing what happened to you. Because he clearly doesn't seem like he's mentally ill. He doesn't seem as though he's a drug addict. I mean, he's not wearing a 3-piece Italian suit, but, he's not disheveled. And yet he's there every day. And that's the best option he has. Do you think it would be viewed by him as insulting and offensive if I were to, speak to him, or on the contrary, hey, somebody's actually taking an interest in me? How do you view this?
It really depends upon the situation, and how crazy you think he is, or if you think he's crazy at all.
I don't think he's crazy.
Well, there's a lot of people that have mental illnesses that wind up on the street. That's a big part of the problem.
Yeah.
Mental illnesses and drug addicts. They're the ones who wind up in those situations. And he could be either of
Either
those.
of those, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, but I bet he's probably lonely, and I bet, if you have a conversation with him, he'd probably appreciate it.
Exactly.
You know, if you could handle it, you know, you might get sucked into his world a little bit. He might want money from you.
That's true.
He might, you know, who knows why he's there.
Can I tell you an incredible story about a homeless guy?
Sure.
It's actually in the last chapter of the Happiness book. His name is Bijan Gilani. I met him when I was a professor at UC Irvine. I was sitting at a cafe, a whole bunch of books thrown all over my table. I was working on a paper. He comes up to me, really well dressed, a bit of a accent. He's of Iranian descent. He says, "Oh my God, these are all interesting books. Do you mind if I sit down with you for a couple of minutes, chat?" You know, so I tell him I'm a professor at UC Irvine. He was doing his PhD, studying the homeless community in Southern California. So it was an anthropological study where instead of going to a culture and living amongst them in the Amazon, the community that he's studying anthropologically is the homeless community. So he embedded himself, and he actually finished his PhD at UC Irvine. He was a wealthy man. Fast forward several years later, he becomes destitute, living out of his car, and himself homeless. Okay? Whoa. And the reason why I mentioned, that's him. That's his car. This is incredible, Jamie. Okay, so this gentleman was living in this car. Now, why am I mentioning this in the context of the book on happiness? So he was asked, Joe, are you a happy person, right? Guess what he answers? He says, now this is a guy who has a PhD, reached pinnacle, very wealthy guy in Southern California, is now living in his car. He says, well, I'm a moral person. I'm a good person. I have a library card to the Newport Beach Library so I can go and nourish my mind. I have a card to the gym so I could stay healthy. Yes, I'm happy. So I use that story to say, here is a guy who has every reason to feel down on himself, yet he frames his situation in such a way that he can elevate himself despite all his trials and tribulations. One more quick story on that. David McCallum, I may have mentioned him previously, I'm not sure. Arguably the most incredible guy I've had on my show, and like you, I've had many amazing people. Spent 29 years in prison, and then he was exonerated for a murder that he didn't commit. He comes on my show, we're chatting. As we're chatting, maybe you could pull that one up too, David McCallum. And as we're chatting, I said to him, you know, David, you must be the reincarnation of Buddha, because it's amazing how you're not filled with any rancor, any sense of vindictiveness, any vengefulness. It's unbelievable. I mean, you're a much better man than I am, because I would want to burn the world down if someone did this to me. He says, you know, Gad, I have a sister who suffers from cerebral palsy, and she's been bedridden, and yet she finds a way to smile. And so from that perspective, you know, whatever I went through is not that bad. So a guy who just spent 3 decades in prison for a crime that he didn't commit was still able to reframe his tragedy into a positive.
Wow.
So and by the way, these are the types of, people learn a lot more from these stories than they do if you had gone all academies on them, right?
Right.
And so that's why I love telling these stories, because then people right away connect to those stories. So,
no, it's God, the way the human brain works. Like, for you studying this for all these years, what is the most surprising thing to you that people do that seems obvious that they shouldn't do in terms of the way they think about things?
Not alter their positions in light of incoming evidence.
It's the big one, right?
That's the big one, because in a sense, it speaks to your decency as a human being. Epistemologically, if we are true, honest people, we change. It's, as you said, we make mistakes. We held positions because we had information's ABC, but now XYZ comes in and we change. And any good, decent, moral person with integrity has to be able to do that. But to your earlier point, most of us are vain. Most of us have pride. Most of us have vested interest in whatever positions we're in. We can't let go of those positions because it will affect my identity. And that's why, by the way, pride of the 7 deadly sins, you may or may not know this, is the supra sin. It's the sin from which all other sins flow, because pride is the orgiastic self-love. So in French, by the way, you distinguish between positive pride and negative pride. In English, you don't have that distinction. So if you say, I'm proud of my work, that's different than saying, don't be prideful in your love. That would be a negative thing. In French, there is a distinction. Positive pride is fierté. Negative pride is orgueil. So that's another interesting thing, is that in some languages, the terms exist to separate. In other languages, you don't have them.
Wow.
Dropping a lot of wisdom and knowledge
You
today.
are, but you are always filled with that. I think one of the more unique things about your background that makes you resistant to stupidity is the fact that you did have to flee with your family.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were involved in a real war. It was a real war zone, a real scary time. And to see the effects of ideology so clearly impose themselves on your life when you were very young.
That's exactly right. That's why in the first chapter of Parasitic Mind, I tell that story, because then that offers the reader a window into why I hate tribalism or I hate identity politics, because Lebanon is the perfect experiment of identity politics, right? And so, you're exactly right.
Do you hold any? I mean, one of the things that's been amazing about all the different conversations that you and I have had, and this is like the 10th one that we've done, a lot of this wouldn't get to some of the people that understand what you're saying and reincorporate it into their understanding of their own behavior and tribal behavior in general, and just the way people behave, just think about things, the way people accept ridiculous ideas.
Yeah.
Like you've had a big impact on that.
Well, you've had. You just gave me the forum. I just show up. You tell me where to show up.
No, but you have all the information. If I show up on myself, it's not worthwhile.
You know, I got to tell you, you can't imagine the extent of. I mean, I guess you can imagine, but I could be walking on a. I mean, that's literally happened. I'm walking on a beach in the Bahamas. A native Bahamian who's doing some, artisanal thing runs up to me, recognizes me because I've been on the Joe Rogan show. So it's unbelievable. And I don't mean that in people are, I mean that's your reach. So how many people do you get per show?
It's a lot. I don't know.
Many millions.
It's a lot.
Right. So, so then again, the people who are looking down on podcasters, if you are in the business of spreading information, you should be lining up to appear on the show. Believe me, I never take it for granted. I feel so privileged that I'm your friend, but that I have this opportunity to come and reach so many people. How many people have written to me and said, I became interested in psychology and consumer behavior and in politics because I heard you say something on Joe Rogan. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's very weird.
Joe Rogan from Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah, sort of. Newton. I lived in Boston, different parts of my life, but it's very bizarre that it reached what it's doing. It's very strange.
How do you handle fame?
Try not to.
Okay.
I try not to engage.
But so are you shut off when you're in public? Because I suspect people
not shut off. No, I just try to be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only way to do it. Otherwise, you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
You go crazy, if you don't interact with people.
People
they do get weird. People get weird with you.
Yeah.
It's weird. They see someone that they've watched on YouTube or they're watched on their phone or they're watched, whatever.
I've been fortunate. I don't know how it's been for you. My ratio, online, I get tons of negativity. But in person, I've only had, and knock on wood, in all the years that I've been in the public, one time a negative encounter. So it's 10 million to 1. That's
pretty amazing.
So your ratio hasn't been as positive? Or
no, it's always very positive. I think even in general, most people are good people, even if they say bad things. And I think if you're around someone, your reaction to them would be very different than writing things in text. I bet a lot of the people that wrote shitty things to you, if they met you, they'd say a nice thing to you.
Right.
It's a terrible way to communicate. It feels just like a real thought.
And sometimes
and a real
you
statement.
are. I don't know if it's. I know that sometimes I'm a lot more caustic when I reply to someone online than I would in person.
Yeah, I really try not to be.
Yeah.
I don't like conflict. I don't think it's necessary. I think most of your conflict should be within yourself.
Right.
Within your own mind, and
Right.
just whatever you're doing with your life and focusing your energy on, you have more bandwidth for it if you don't have these external conflicts that are totally unnecessary. I just think they're unnecessary.
Well, you seem to. I obviously follow you on Twitter or X. You don't post. You don't engage anybody anymore, right? Almost never.
It's just not fun. It's just you're thrown into this weird world of opinions and people. And if it's about you, like, you shouldn't be that interested in you that you want to read all these people's opinions about you. I'm interested in other people writing about stuff.
Right.
I'm interested in different opinions about things, but I don't want to engage because it's the environment of engaging online is just too weird.
And you're
It's
doing
just-
it every day for 3 hours already.
It's
So you
just
know.
too many different opinions coming at you and too many different people coming at you. It's like, that's not good for people. I don't think it's good to be interacting with that many people in any form. I don't think it's good to be interacting with that many people in real life. I think it's just, you probably never have a deep conversation.
Right.
If you're just constantly running into new people. Like, everywhere you go, just people constantly. You're going to want some time off. You know, and I think it's the same with like interactions online. And I think people don't think about it that way. They'll think about like every time someone's talking at you, you're getting input. Every time you're around someone, you're getting input.
Yeah.
And if you are around people that are cool, it's a great experience. It's really fun. We
Yeah.
had a great time. We were laughing. Oh my God, it was so much fun. But if you're around someone who's really annoying and shitty or mean or snide or just ugh, now it's a bad time, right? So you know to avoid those people.
yeah.
But you don't have that opportunity online. It's a party and the whole world's there. And 80% of them might be Chinese bots. Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what's coming at you?
Yeah.
And you're just going to take those in and your brain's going to process them like they're real opinions and real people that are to be respected.
Well,
these are things to be considered. And maybe you are a piece of shit, Gad. maybe you are self-hating. Or maybe you are this, you're that.
Of many of the wonderful advice that you've given on the show, I remember you once said to me, kind of surprised, what are you doing reading comments? Never, ever, ever read comments. And I remember that sometimes when I answer someone, they say, clearly you're not implementing Joe Rogan's advice. But I must say that over the years, I've greatly reduced my temptation to. So I can't say that I never read, but much, much less than before.
You'll feel way better.
Yeah.
It's just not good for you. I think it's a bad way to process people's interactions. I don't think it's a real indicator of people. I think it's a weird way that people are willing to engage online they would never do in real life. Otherwise, it would be a bloodbath in the streets everywhere.
Right.
People would be just killing each other left and right. It's not like that in the real world because that's the real world type of communication is very different than online communication. But online communication gets processed in your head like it's real communication, and I think it heightens anxiety with everybody.
Yeah. So in the happiness book, I talk about research that shows that the number one factor in terms of longevity, more than your cholesterol scores when you're 50, is the tightness of your social network, your friendship group. And so with that in mind, if I were to ask you to pick your 5 biggest friends, are they ones that you've held from when you were in Newton, or are there a lot of new entrants into the inner circle of Joe Rogan over the years? Like, does it shift much your friendship group, or are you very much
I have
stable?
some friends that I've been friends with since I was in high school, but I have a lot of really good friends that I've been friends with comics that are real good friends of mine for decades.
Right.
So I've known a lot of these guys, and a lot of the guys that are here now, like Tony. I've been friends with Tony Hinchcliffe for at least 15 years, something like that, right? When did Tony first start doing shows at Red Band?
Just 10, 11, something like that.
Something
Like
crazy
11,
like
we'll
that.
say.
11, 12 years ago, whatever it was. Joey Diaz, I've been friends with him for 25 years, 26 years, maybe more. You know, there's a lot of these guys I've known forever. I've known Ari for 20 plus years. You know, we've been friends for so long. And Tom Segura, same thing. I've known him for 20 years almost. So when those guys all wanted to move out here together, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Ari hasn't moved here, but I'm going to try to convince that motherfucker.
Here, meaning Austin.
Yeah.
Okay. From California.
He likes New York.
Oh, he's in New York.
He likes
okay.
to be like congested.
Okay.
He likes to be beep beep, fuck you. He likes, I like it. He likes all the energy of all those people packed on top of each other.
Are most of your Southern California friends out of there?
Yeah.
Is that
yeah,
right?
there's a few guys left. Yeah, Bill Burr stayed. A few other guys stayed that are really good.
By the way, I had one of your friends on my show, Brian Callen.
Oh, Brian Callen's awesome.
He's such a cool guy.
He's a smart motherfucker.
He really is.
And also retarded at the same time.
Oh, care to
He's
expand
just
on
silly.
this?
He's just silly. But he's just
Well, he wasn't with on our show, on my show. He was like very serious.
Yeah, no, he's very capable of that
Yeah.
too. He's very well read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's a great guest too. Great podcast guest.
Well, I've always said that I mean, comics have to by definition be intelligent because, and by the way, that's a sexually selected trait, right? When women say, you know, I want a man who's funny, she's obviously saying, I want a man who's intelligent, because it's very unlikely for you to be truly funny and be a complete dullard, right? And so by you saying, I like funny guys, you are effectively saying by proxy, I like intelligent guys. So it doesn't surprise me that Brian Callen or all your other friends would be funny because, I mean, look at Dave Chappelle. How are you going to pull off all those insights if you were this moron, right? So he's probably smarter than a lot of my colleagues.
Well, he's very smart. Dave's very smart. But he's also, you know, I mean, he's like in the world of stand-up 7 days a week. He's like a master craftsman out there, like swinging away at ideas and piecing them up together on the road. There's no one like him. That guy flies into a town and just shows up at comedy clubs and goes on stage. Like, they don't even know he's going to be there.
Wow.
He does it all the time.
Is that right?
Yeah, man. He did it with me. I was in Denver. He just showed up.
You mean
He flew in.
you were performing in Denver
I
and
was
he just
performing
shows
in
up?
Denver, and he just showed up.
Now, do you feel slighted in that he might take over the scene, or on the
No, he's
contrary?
my friend.
Okay.
No. I wanted him to go on.
Okay.
'Cause, this is what happened. I did this weekend at the Comedy Works in Denver, and Dave flew in and just decided to show up. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, I just wanted to come say hi.
Oh,
He
my
just flew in.
God.
I go, you want to go on stage? He goes, should I? I go, fuck yeah, hold on. So I go out onto the stage,
Oh,
and
my
I yelled
God.
out to the audience, tell everybody to come back. Dave Chappelle's here. And they were like, what? And so they all piled back in. He did like another 40 minutes and murdered. It was incredible. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. You know, but that guy does that all the time, all over the place. He'll just show up in New York, start doing sets, show up in LA, start doing sets.
Wow.
He just shows up and works out his material, and he's just in it. He's just in it, man, you know? Just fully involved in this art form.
So you would say he's currently the top living comic?
You know, he's absolutely, you can't consider the best without considering him. It's all subjective, you know. There's certain people that think this person's funnier, or certain people that think that. I think it's all stupid to say like a number one, number two, number three. I think there's just a level of greatness that some achieve that he is at right now that's very rare. It's very Richard Pryor.
Right.
It's very Sam Kinison. There's just like outliers that are just so consistently good and over the years just have so much output. You got to put him in that category. And he also has this mystique of taking 10 years off.
Right, he disappears,
Yeah, he disappeared. He stopped doing stand-up. Well, one of the best of all time does this incredible sketch show that's arguably the best sketch show ever that only does 2 seasons.
Right.
And then he disappears. And then he just quits. And then he doesn't even do stand-up. You know what he's doing? He would do stand-up at a park. He would show up with a speaker and plug it in and just do free stand-up in like Seattle.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And would he draw huge crowds, or would it be
Go
like
crazy.
seven?
They couldn't believe he was there. Like, what is he doing here? This is insane.
Wow.
He would just show up places. You know, like a real artist on a vision quest.
Right.
You know? And then he comes back 10 years later and just starts dominating the game again.
Well, I saw him. I don't know if you saw that Netflix where he's recounting how he went back to his high school.
Yeah.
And what struck me is how good of a storyteller he was. Right? I mean, that's the real key, right? I mean,
Yes.
and I think you've had Jonathan Gottschall, right? The professor who studies evolutionary literature, and he studies why storytelling is important to us. And Dave Chappelle is a perfect manifestation of this, right? I mean, he can garner huge multi-million-dollar deals because he could tell a mean story.
He's just so likable, too. Yeah. Everything about him. Like, when you start smiling when you hear him talk.
Yeah.
You know, there's a vibe that he has. When he starts talking, he just starts smiling.
That's true.
You know, and you know he's going somewhere with it. Like, where are you going with this? Oh, no!
That's true.
The world needs that.
Yeah.
We need people like that out there. We need guys like him out there.
So of all the different hats you wear, that's the one that brings you. I mean, you're a podcaster. You do the MMA stuff. You do the. Is the in being in front of the audience, doing your routine, the thing that gives you the most high?
It's the most complicated. It's the hardest to pull off. Having conversations with people is pretty effortless.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's just fun. It's engaging. It's interesting. It's like I feel very lucky to be able to have these kind of conversations with you. But doing stand-up is like you're piecing together the bits. You're making sure they're polished. They're you got the right angle on them. Got them honed. You figured out the most effective way to insert the idea. They figure out the sneakiest way to hide the punchline.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun. But it's all fun. That's the beautiful thing. It's like if you can do stuff that you really like doing. Like I really like having conversations with people. That's fun. I really like doing stand-up. That's fun. I really like doing UFC commentary. That's fun. Just do fun things.
You are living a blessed life, my
I'm
friend.
very lucky. I don't know what I did in a past life. I did something, though.
Yeah.
Definitely did something.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
But it's been very, very beneficial to me to be able to have conversations like this, to be able to have so many conversations with so many people that know so many things. And it just, as you said, it highlights how little you know and how much there is to know and how many different things there is to know, so many different things about.
It's unbelievable.
Like there are people right now that are studying their entire life some shit you've never even heard of.
Exactly.
And they're the experts of it. And it's a fucking hugely complex thing that they're involved in, and you don't even know it exists. And you're like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
What? What is this? I mean, who the hell knows what kind of scientific discoveries that are going on right now as we sit in this room? There's a frenzy of technological activity going on right now.
Well, I mean, Austin, I think it was after my last trip here, which was the last time I came last year to do your show. And I was arguing that Austin might be the next. So, you had Florence of the Medicis, of the Da Vinci, 500 years ago. Then you had the Vienna Circle, the Viennese Circle, in the 1880s to 1930, where Vienna was kind of the intellectual hotbed. And maybe it's a bit hyperbolic, but I think Austin is vying to be kind of the next one, right? And that everybody's coming here, all kinds of creative types, whether they be academics or writers or comics or podcasters or Elon Musk or, so do you think that Austin, it would be reasonable to argue that it's becoming sort of the intellectual / creative center of the United States?
That's ridiculous.
You mean New York?
Nah.
You could never.
I think, first of all, there's great spots everywhere. There's great spots in New York. You just have to deal with a lot of shit in New York. But to say there's not amazing shit going on in New York artistically is crazy. To say it's not amazing stuff going on in LA, that's crazy too. It's just what matters is we're doing it in a way that's beneficial for comedy. It's beneficial for us. It's good for us. It's like we've set up stand up out here to make it good for us. The Google people and all the people that moved out here and they're doing it because it's a good place to be. I don't necessarily know if there's hot spots. I think the hot spot's the internet. There's cities that are better to live in because they have less people and less traffic and less bullshit and less laws and less nonsense imposed on the citizens. Yeah, definitely. But
No, but there's a critical mass of people that congregate in an area, making that place unique and different from other places. That's what made Vienna, Vienna, right? It was the start of psychoanalysis. It's where Gödel hung out. It's where Freud, it's where Jung hung out. So, I mean, yeah, maybe Austin is not there yet, but, University of Austin is being founded here, right? That's trying to be the anti-woke university. So there is definitely, apparently, a vibe. People keep telling me to move here.
Yeah, I think it's very pretentious to bring that up, though, if you actually live here. Like, I'm very hesitant to even say. I would never compare it in such lofty terms.
Right.
It's a great spot. The University of Austin thing, they're setting it up as an anti-woke. They're not saying that, though.
I mean,
right?
they're not saying
Don't
it
put in
that
the
way.
literature.
Yeah. It's not in the mission statement, but it's definitely kind of a countermeasure to all the illiberal stuff that we've seen in universities. Yeah. I actually, a couple of years ago, I came to give a couple of talks at University of Texas, Austin, UT Austin, and I met with the president of University of Austin. We had brunch together.
Are you thinking about coming here?
I mean, if the right opportunity presents itself.
Really?
Inshallah.
Wow. That would be wild. You could be free from communist Canada.
Oh, my God. Free from communist Canada, free from the weather. And, by the
That's
way,
right. Free
something
from the
that we
weather.
didn't talk about, sir. Do you
What?
know that the biggest effort to cancel me came after my last appearance on your show?
No. What did you say? They got you in so much trouble.
You're not going to believe this.
What
Of
did you
all
say?
the things that I've said, do you remember at one point in the show, I said, because you had gone to Greece last summer, and then I said, oh, we just came back from Portugal. And I got to tell you, I wasn't a big fan of the Portuguese accent. And then I went on and said, but actually, I speak Hebrew, and Hebrew is violently ugly. I said, but the worst, the real affront to human dignity is the French-Canadian accent. Completely jokingly, I used the line affront to human dignity as a running gag for 10 years on Twitter.
Right.
The Beatles are an affront to human dignity. Anybody who doesn't love Lionel Messi is an affront to human dignity, right? It's an ongoing gag. It's a throwaway line. I said it. I think you had cracked up, you had laughed, and we move on.
Yeah, it's a joke.
About a week later, a super angry kind of French Quebecer separatist guy does a article in the La Presse, which is like the main Quebec newspaper, saying this guy, this immigrant that we opened our doors to and saved him from civil war, goes on the #1 show and erases our existence. For the next 3 weeks, Joe Rogan, for the next 3 weeks, I was the #1 most hated person in Quebec. Luckily, I was in California on vacation.
Oh, my God.
And the Quebec Minister of Justice weighed in against me. The Minister of Science and Education weighed in, right? Go back, Arab Jew, sell falafel back in the Middle East. We opened our doors to you.
Oh, my God.
So, apparently you can't joke. You could say a lot of things, but you don't joke about the Quebec accent on Joe Rogan.
I personally think it's a beautiful accent.
Well, I've learned since I've been re-educated that it is the most
I'm
beautiful.
glad you've been re-educated.
Exactly.
The thing about this place, though, is the heat. You got to be ready for the heat.
Yeah. Well, I am from Lebanon.
That's true. Yeah. Is Lebanon a drier heat?
No, it's drier. You're
Yeah.
right. It's not humid. This is humid, right?
Oh, it gets
This is-
funky.
Okay.
You get funky
What's the
when
mosquito
it
situation
rains.
here?
It's not good.
It's not good?
They exist.
Oh, it's really bad?
It's not good. There's lakes everywhere.
Oh, God.
That's why we have so many bats.
That's true.
Yeah,
they,
that's
they
what
eat
it
like
is.
tons of
They
per day.
consume mosquitoes. If it wasn't for bats, we would be fucked.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I've actually, in 2005 was the first time I came to Austin. There was a human behavior and evolution conference here, and the hotel was right next to where they come out. And so, you know what I'm talking about. And so we actually stood there as they came out. I was
Crazy.
I couldn't
right?
believe it.
It's crazy.
It's magical.
It's crazy. Also, by the way, sometimes those little fuckers have diseases. Like I know there was a story that we talked about on the podcast before where there was a guy and a bat grazed his finger and he died from rabies.
No kidding.
Yeah. They didn't know what was wrong with him until it was too late. And rabies is something that once you have, you fucking
It's
have
done.
it.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
You have to get, if something bites you that has rabies, you have to get really painful shots, and they have to do it very
In
quickly.
your stomach, right? Is it? Yeah,
I
that's
think.
right. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I'm saying but
Yeah.
I think someone said it I said it to you. You just said it to me.
Yeah.
I don't remember where it
Yeah,
got
yeah.
from, but I do know it's like fatal, like 99%
Yeah.
of the time. It's a terrifying fucking disease.
Yeah.
And bats have it.
Yeah.
Bats, rats, skunks, all kinds of shit. gets it. Dogs,
What are the guys with the
raccoons.
raccoons? Thank you.
Yeah, they
have
get it. They get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's scary. There's a crazy video that was on Instagram of this cop, and she walks, I think it's a she. Pretty sure it might be a dude. I'm sorry. I don't want to misgender anybody. I don't remember. But this cop shoots this fucking raccoon, and the raccoon's not dying, and shoots it again, and then shoots it again, and then shoots it again. It was a rabid raccoon.
Wow.
So she's just unloading a gun into this zombie raccoon. and it's stumbling to a fucking pistol at a raccoon, little ass raccoon. Boom, boom, boom.
Usually, when you have rabies, you get hydrophobia, right? You get fear
Right,
of
you
water.
can't drink.
You can't drink.
Yeah.
What's the mechanism there? Who
It's
knows?
a good question. It's a good question. I mean,
That's funny.
it is weird. It's weird that it doesn't affect people in the same way. It doesn't make people want to bite people. Because
Right.
it makes animals fearless and they want to bite you.
Right. Yeah, they become
Which is-
risk takers. Yeah.
They want to bite you because
Yeah.
they want to give it to you. That's
Is that right?
What else could it be? What
Just
else
they're
could it be?
aggressive. They're
Why? Well, why would they get aggressive to the point where they want to chase after you and bite you, put themselves in danger
yeah.
to go
I don't
after
know.
you
Yeah.
and bite you?
Right.
They want to give it to you. It's like a zombie thing.
Right.
But it's just like, it just kills people. It doesn't turn them into zombies.
Right.
But it turns animals into zombies. Like they just want to come get you. Like that's crazy that there's a virus like that. And that is what like 28 days later was, right?
Right.
It was like they were engineering a virus that they were putting in chimpanzees and it broke out into people.
Right. I just finished a book called The Plague that looked at the history of civilizations through the lens of different plagues. Very interesting. I mean, it got tedious at one point, right? I mean, you're going through the different civilizations, but I mean, you know, the Black Plague, you know,
Yeah.
you know, and so on. But going back to the Romans and so on, so a lot of history was shaped by a particular virus becoming more or less prevalent at a particular time and place.
It is so fascinating when you hear about plagues like just wiping out
Yeah.
giant swaths of the population. Like the plague of North Americans coming
Right.
interacting with the Native Americans.
That was smallpox, right?
Yeah, 90%.
Yeah.
Killed
Wow.
90% of the
Amazing.
people here. Probably did the same thing through the Mayas. Like that's probably what happened to all those people that disappeared. They left behind Chichen Itza and all these crazy
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
What happened to those people?
Right.
Doesn't that sort of coincide with when explorers started showing up in boats with cooties? You know, and they're like,
Cooties.
it's crazy that
Yeah.
that how much that shapes human population. The interaction of these weird little things that are kind of alive, that jump from person to person.
What's amazing is that going back to Fauci and so on, I think the fatality rate was not, I mean, or survival rate was like 99.7 or something, right? For COVID. Does that sound right?
Something crazy like
something like that. Now imagine if you compare that to the fatality rate of the Black Plague, where I think it was something in the order of 1/3 of Europe was wiped out. So imagine the level of precaution that we took. I understand hindsight is 20/20, but we took all these precautions for something that ultimately you had more than a 99% chance of surviving. So contextualize that against the Black Plague. Maybe it was an overreaction.
What did they think the roots of the Black Plague were? Was it poor sanitation that caused?
So, I mean, of course, the Jews were blamed, by the way.
The Jews are blamed for the Black Plague?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, there's a guy, I think have you had John Durant on your show? He's the guy who wrote a book on sort of paleo fitness or something a few years ago. He has an interesting piece where he argues that one of the reasons why Jews serve as scapegoats in many of these plague situations is because of the rites of purification that are in the Jewish religion, hence rendering the Jews less likely to succumb to many of these, transmissions. He was talking about something like, so you know that there's 613 mitzvot, like commandments or rules in Judaism, 613. And if I remember, I hope I'm not misquoting, I think something like 20% of them, he says in his book, are related to purification. By the way, you see it also in Islam when before you go into the mosque, you have to wash your hands in a certain way and wash your feet and so on. And so because the Jews would oftentimes have lesser infection rates than the other populations within that ecosystem, then they would always look to them suspiciously. How come you're not all dropping like assholes while the rest of us are dead? It must be the Jews. And so that's an interesting explanation for some of the anti-Semitism.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's an insane blame.
That's an insane blame indeed.
So, do they think the cause of the reason why these plagues they were transferred from like fleas to rats?
So I think the correct answer, and maybe somebody will correct me in the comment section, is it's the fleas on the rats that transmit the virus. Yes,
right.
exactly.
And where do they think that the virus came from?
I don't know. I wouldn't want to misspeak, but yeah.
But back then it was fucking. What kind of medicine did you have? Like, would they give you carrot juice?
Well,
did they even know how to make carrot juice?
Bloodletting for the royals.
A lot of fucking voodoo, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of
Well, actually, I was very interested in bringing on my show, but it never worked out. A specialist on Galen. You know who Galen is? He was an ancient physician in ancient Greece. So kind of like, I don't know if he preceded Hippocrates or came after him, but I'm interested in these old ancient world physicians, not only because they were great thinkers, but also how many things they got wrong, right? So Hippocrates believed in the theory of four humors. It's any disease that you have is due to you having too little or too much of one of these, bile or this or that, which is complete nonsense today. But at the time, the great Hippocrates thought that. So I'm very interested to our earlier point about how you revise your positions in light of incoming information. A lot of the stuff that Marcus Aurelius would have gone to these guys because they are the great physicians. Today we would laugh as complete voodoo.
Yeah, today. And what will we be looking at today?
And laughing, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In the future.
This is the Black Death wiki, and this is some of the origins, and this is the hygiene section.
The runoff from the local slaughterhouse had made his garden stinking and putrid, while another charged that the blood from slain animals flooded nearby streets and lanes, making a foul corruption and abominable sight to all dwelling near. In much of medieval Europe, sanitation legislation consisted of an ordinance requiring homeowners to shout, "Look out below," 3 times before dumping a full chamber pot into the street.
Yikes.
That's it. Just look out below.
Look out below. Shit is coming out the window. You have to say it 3 times. That's the rule. Bro, imagine
that's for the black plague?
Early Christians considered bathing a temptation. With this danger in mind, St. Benedict declared, "To those who are well, and especially to the young, bathing shall seldom be permitted."
Oh, because you might masturbate if
you
bathe?
might touch your body.
Okay.
Oh my God. St. Agnes took the injunction to heart and died without ever bathing.
Yikes.
What?
Yeah, you don't want to be a clean guy.
Yo, what did that guy smell like? Like, what did he smell like?
Be the one clean guy in the street.
I did not have the smell of Saint Benedictine. Is that who it was?
St. Benedict?
Saint Benedict in my bingo card for today.
Agnes.
What did that guy smell like? St. Agnes? Which guy was it?
Agnes is the one who died. Benedict's declaration.
Oh.
Oh, so Agnes died without bathing.
Yeah, he's not the only one.
Bro, he's not the only one who died without bathing?
I'm sure.
Bro.
So when we looked at that one king, he was like known to bathe 1 time a year.
Yeah, but that's probably reasonable.
Do you remember the old story with...
That's better than never.
Do you remember the story with Napoleon when he tells... is it Marie? What was her name? His lover?
Oh, the movie? Is that what you're saying?
It's in the movie, but I don't know if that...
I didn't see the movie.
It sucked. Don't see it.
Really?
It really sucked. And I love the main actor. I loved him in
Joker.
The Joker. I mean, he was unbelievable. But anyways, she tells him she's coming to see him, his mistress or wife, whatever, and he says, "Don't bathe," because he wanted to be bathing in her
juices,
perfume. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So that's a famous.
I do. I remember reading that.
Yeah,
getting sick to my stomach. But I guess it's just what you're into. You know,
that's right.
What you get accustomed to. You know,
that's right.
Like, how about that African tribe that puts those plates in their lips?
Lip plating and ear plating. I actually use that example when I'm talking about, is beauty socially constructed or is beauty universal? And then I argue that there are some elements of beauty that are universal: facial symmetry, clear face, so on, like clear skin. But some other elements are completely culturally constrained, like lip plating and ear plating, like neck elongation in Southeast Asia.
Yes.
Right? We would look at that and say it's grotesque. They think it's gorgeous.
Yeah. It looks insane. Yeah. Like, if you take it off, your head's going to fall off.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, no, literally, you don't have the muscles
muscles.
have so atrophied that
Yeah.
you can't hold your head. It falls down.
So they are stuck with those for life?
They're stuck with them for life.
Wow.
And the more you have, the more beautiful you are. So
What do you think the origin of human beings elongating their skulls was all about?
I don't know about elongating the skulls, but the big size of the head is the argument is that you needed a big brain. It's called the social intelligence hypothesis. It basically argues that the greatest threat that we face are from conspecifics, other members of our species. I'm trying to manipulate you for my best cause. You're trying to identify that I'm trying to manipulate you.
Right.
That creates an evolutionary arms race between our brains, and it causes for the explosion of our prefrontal cortex. So that's the best argument I've heard for why we've evolved to have such big brains.
What I was asking is about people that forcefully shape
Oh,
their
I see.
heads. You ever
Sorry.
see those ancient skulls where they like
yes.
pressed boards against people's heads?
Got it.
Like
I
there's
don't
this
know.
practice of like shaping your skull, which by the way is so real that gamers are getting it. Oh, I should make sure I'm not getting it. Is my head dented? Damn. What if my head's dented? That'd be crazy. Gamers are getting it on the top of their heads
By virtue of wearing
by
this-
virtue of wearing headsets
Okay.
that's pushing down. Maybe I have a dent. Dude, I'm getting paranoid. But some guys have these crazy dents in their skull, like divots. So they shave their head and they realize that this band on the top of their head is actually shaping their head.
Wow. But
And-
I don't know that practice. I don't know what it's
In
from.
ancient cultures, for some strange reason, like that's the nuttiest one. Like these guys that's real, right?
Okay, well, you know for
This is not.
This goes away though.
It goes away.
That's not permanent.
How long does that last?
I'd have to ask them.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, I know who this guy is. He
So
doesn't
it
have
went
a
away?
permanent dent, yeah.
So the dent is just the skin's just constricted and smushed up like that.
I think so.
God, I hope so.
Right.
But the point is they think they did it with children, and that they tried to shape their head
Right.
in like this elongated, very strange looking thing. And I wonder if it was like a symbol of aristocracy or something. You know,
That
like
sounds right.
I mean, if you look, people they take their babies and they pierce their ears. People do that all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
which is kind of crazy. But
There's foot binding, Chinese foot binding. You've heard of that?
which is really insane.
There is
That's really insane.
scarification also. So I've talked about rites of passage. Oh, what?
Yeah, it's head binding.
Just smash their head with a
And
board.
what's
Oh, this is so nuts.
But what's
to
the
develop a certain look? Look at the look that they wanted. They wanted this like bizarre alien head look.
this is a European.
It says that it's happening in multiple China, Japan,
Oh, look at that,
Africa,
Wasn't it?
Americas. I was trying to find a reason.
Where
in
where
there. I was digging for a reason.
where are the Nazca lines again? Is that
Like
Peru? Peru? Isn't there a bunch of artifacts in Peru of like ancient skulls that were shaped in this way? All the UFO people think that they're like trying to look like aliens.
Oh,
so that's
right,
why they
yeah.
were shaping their head.
Right.
You know, because the Nazca lines are really weird.
Speaking of UFOs, have you heard of we were talking about called the Raelians?
I have heard of this.
You know
I don't remember the story though.
Oh my God! I watched the documentary on it. You have to watch it. So,
Is it a UFO cult thing?
well, I think they argued that the Jews it wasn't an anti-Semitic thing. The Jews were extraterrestrials that landed in Jerusalem.
What is this?
There you go. Yeah.
What?
And the reason why I know about them is because at one point when they left France, they moved to Quebec.
Oh my God.
So they were in Quebec for a while, and now the leader is in Japan. He's in his 70s, and after having been kicked out of every other country, he's scamming a new generation of Japanese folks.
That's the guy.
That's the guy. And the woman with him is a scientist who said that they had cloned the first human. You remember that story?
Bro, he looks hilarious.
Yeah.
That guy looks like a guy that I would have play that guy in a funny movie about him. You know,
Yeah.
you know, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah.
Like that was an outfit that someone made for that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, the the desire to adhere to an ideology, the desire to like be a part of a club and a group, it's so embedded in us that people they can't help themselves.
Yeah, so there's a study that I can't reference what it is because I don't remember the reference, but it was in a advanced social psychology course I had taken with Professor Dennis Regan. I like to give out shout outs to, I'm sure he's not listening, but anyways, he's retired now. And it was a study where the researchers brought in people into the lab, into a waiting room, and put a red sticker on them or a blue sticker, and then said, oh, we have to go and do something else, and we'll come back in a few minutes for part 2 of the study. But of course, the real study was to simply see how people would interact in the waiting room while waiting, having now been assigned this completely random queue of belongingness, red or blue. And what ended up happening is that the blue people started talking to each other and the red people started talking to each other. And I think that's a brilliant study because it shows that there's an external cue now that decides which group you belong to. So it doesn't matter if I'm tall or short, gay or straight, Jew or Gentile. Now it's blue or red. And so that shows that the architecture of the human mind, to your point, is built to belong to some tribe.
Yeah, even if it's a really dumb one run by that guy. People just love to be a part of a group like that.
By the way, all of these guys, including some of the current religions that we have, the guy who starts always gets commandments from God to get access to all the beautiful women.
Well, if they all get that, obviously that's what God wants. That's how you know they're legit.
Exactly.
It seems like that's the pattern God follows.
Exactly. God is Darwinian.
Whenever someone breaks off,
exactly.
As long as that's the move. Yeah. They all do it. Like Koresh, they all. It's just so weird how common it is.
Oh,
like, Koresh,
I forgot about this. That's the guy with the
here,
FBI.
Bro.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only 90 minutes from here.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's close. Yeah. That must have been fucking insane. I mean, they lit that place on fire. Yeah. They ran them over with tanks. You know. I mean,
that was 93, I think.
Something like that. Yeah.
I was a graduate student. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you consider, speaking of religion, I don't know if it's too personal to ask you, do you consider yourself religious at all or not at all? Or how do you fall on that divide?
I'm not religious in that there's not a specific religion that I follow. I do not think that this is it.
Okay.
I think we're in a station of a whole dial of possibility. And I think we're interconnected in some way that we don't have the ability to perceive. And we're a part of the universe in some very strange way.
Do you think, and forgive me for asking this, but do you think that that's your way to handle the very, very deep-seated fear of mortality? So that, okay, you don't tap into a Abrahamic narrative of there's going to be an afterlife, but you find some other mechanism by which it says, hey, don't worry, the party's not going to end soon.
No, I'm not even saying that. The party might end. It might not matter. What I'm saying is that if I just looked at this very, very, very strange existence, what we know so far, just what we know so far, is so bizarre and so alien. Just what we know about subatomic particles blinking in and out of existence, appearing both moving and still at the same time. Like there's just nuttiness about like the subatomic world, like the amount of empty spaces in there. Like what's in there?
Right.
Nothing's touching anything? Explain. Like what are you saying? So when it just gets to that, I think the whole existence of being a conscious entity is a massive mystery. We all assume that everybody else has our exact same interface. We all assume that the way I see the world, you should see the world, Harry. Get vaccinated, Harry. And everybody just assumes.
Why does it have to be a gay
else
guy? Why is it a gay guy?
I was a lady. I was trying to be a lady.
Oh, a lady. Okay.
But I think this, whatever we're going through, this life thing, everyone's trying to pretend as if they, in their way of doing it, make sense. But none of it makes sense. We're running straight towards a cliff. We're launching AI. We're involved in multiple proxy wars. We're all terrified that money isn't real anymore. Like that everything's chaos, and there might be aliens. There might be aliens.
And yet we're both here smiling.
Yeah, and yet we're both here smiling. It's both the greatest time and the worst time ever.
Right.
You know, it's a great time because it feels like an asteroid's coming. But it's also the asteroid's not here yet.
Well,
so.
our mutual friend Sam Harris would say the asteroid is called Donald Trump.
Oh yeah. Some people, that's their white whale.
Yeah, it is.
It's Moby Dick.
It is Moby
You know?
Dick.
And in tribal warfare, you must take the head of your enemy.
Right.
You know?
Right.
There's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of that. And there's also a lot of there's a lot of unwillingness to admit that you're being influenced by a very specific narrative that's been blaring through the news forever.
Yeah.
You know? And the weirdest one is now, like, some people are banding about the idea that he actually is going to be a dictator when he gets into office.
Yeah.
That he's actually, you got to listen to him, he's actually going to be a dictator. Like, first of all, the guy talks basically like a stand-up comic. He has bits. He has routines he does about
true.
Biden. It's kind of like gonzo presidential, talk. He doesn't talk like a regular politician. He says wild shit, and they know he's saying wild shit. But it's like the amount of times I've heard people say that he's going to be a dictator now because of that. He said, I'd like to be a dictator for one day. Just one day. It's like the guy's like, it's almost like he's doing stand-up.
But do you think that they believe it, or
The problem is, and Elon pointed out this, the problem with this argument is he was president for 4 years.
Why didn't he do it then?
And he did nothing that resembled that at all.
No, but it's the second term that he'll do it.
This is crazy talk.
Yeah.
Based on what? Your fear, your hatred, your tribal hatred? Like, I don't have a dog in this fight.
Well,
if I'm looking at it objectively, I'm like, one guy can't talk anymore.
Yeah. I've explained in the parasitic mind why they have the aversion that they have. I call it an aesthetic injury, right? Because people use these cosmetic reasons in making judgments. So Barack Obama might say nothing of substance, but my God, he says it with style and coolness, right? He's tall. Statesman. He smiles. He's got a mellifluous voice. He speaks with a baritone. You know, he's charming. On the other hand, Trump, you know, he's overweight. He's cantankerous. He seems like he speaks with this Queen's kind of accent. So he's disgusting. I revile him.
Right.
And so I think for our anointed elites, if he can ascend to the highest position of power, it invalidates all the degrees that I have from the fancy schools. I'm supposed to be the anointed one. And so he serves as an existential aesthetic injury. I can't have that. And therefore, I have to come up with all of these crazy predictions because it can't be. How could such a pig ever be president?
It's like it's a real easy narrative. It feels like he's an easy guy to hate. He's a billionaire, lives in a golden house.
Right.
You know, it's easy to hate people like that. It's easy. He says ridiculous shit. It's easy to hate people like that.
Yeah.
The whole thing's a mess.
But,
like you wish you had some sort of, and that's where AI comes in. God, this is where AI comes in.
Okay.
Some really rational, super intelligent voice that really understands human politics. There's a way to make everyone happy. And then we have President AI. Maybe Trump is what brings in the devil because Trump brings in President AI.
From your lips to God's ears, they say.
You know, I don't mean him. I mean like the reaction to him. That we can never have this again.
Are you able to, or not able?
So
are
they
you,
just launch presidential AI.
Are you willing to make a prediction for 2024?
No. Why would I do that?
Right.
I don't even know who the fuck's going to make it there. One of them might be in jail.
Right.
Who knows if the other guy's going to make it? I don't know. You know, I mean, the whole thing is cuckoo.
Yeah.
President AI is our only solution, Gad.
All right, let's start working on it. Well, let's call Elon. He can maybe help us.
It would be the worst thing that could ever happen to people. If we gave up, we were like, take us away, technology daddy.
Right.
You fix it for us. Then we're really going to be slaves. We're really going to be in a matrix. They'll just keep us stupid. Just keep us stupid and get us to stop breeding.
We could
and
never
then we
be
would die
stupid
off.
while we have the Joe Rogan
Yeah, we
podcast.
could. Yeah, 100% we could. We're all going to give into it. It's going to be better than regular life. That's what the fear is. The fear is like there's already people right now that are justifying not having kids. Like, oh, I don't want to have kids. I don't. And you shouldn't have kids if you don't want to have kids. I'm not saying that you should.
Because it's eco-terrorism to have kids, right?
There's that argument. And I
Yeah.
mean, like, that argument is so crazy because listen, do you like people? I love people. Okay, there's only one way to make them. You gotta make people, and if you enjoy people, you're gonna enjoy kids too. You know,
Right.
like listen, the whole thing is different. The world is different than you think it is if you don't have kids. And when you have them, you go, okay, I think I see this place different now.
Honestly,
I think I understand.
I regret greatly that we only had 2 kids. My wife and I started late, and we've been together for almost 25 years now, but our kids are younger than that. So in retrospect, I would have liked that these kids be numbers 3 and 4 rather than number 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, listen, man, you should be happy. They're great, and it's all beautiful. It's all beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
I just think that we're in this very bizarre interface with each other right now, and I think it's turned people half sideways. And there's some people that I think are really smart people that appear out of their fucking mind.
Right.
And I don't know how you got cracked that easy. I don't know what made you fall apart like that. It seems
Maybe
silly.
you'll tell me some of those names off air.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple names. There's a few people we lost. They just, for whatever reason.
Yes.
And I think that it's fascinating when you see how vulnerable we are psychically. You know, how vulnerable we are as a civilization, that something with a 99 point, what was it? 0.7% survival rate turned our world upside down for 3 years. And no one's held accountable for the decisions that were made.
I mean, not a single
absolutely
person
ridiculous.
has even lost their job, I don't think, right? I mean,
No. They were all doing the right thing, and the idea is that hindsight is 20/20, and you can't be a Monday morning quarterback. And
That's right.
I get it. But also, you know, some boundaries were like severely overstepped. And there were some medications that were demonized for no fucking reason at all, other than people had decided that there was only one thing that was going to save us from this.
Yeah.
The whole thing, just terrifying how easy it was pulled off. Terrifying. You know, and again, hindsight's 20/20. They didn't know at the time. They were trying to protect people. I believe a lot of doctors acted like that. But if AI was around back then that could process the data and say, no, look, you need to take ivermectin.
Right.
You know how nuts that would be?
Yeah. So in chapter 7 of not this book, of The Parasitic Mind, I talk about nomological networks of cumulative evidence. Have we talked about this at all?
No.
Okay. So that, in a sense, you could imagine an AI system being built to do what I'm about to say. So Elon, if you're listening or watching, call me. So a nomological network of cumulative evidence is when you're trying to prove that a position that you're holding is veridical, and you do it by trying to amass as many lines of distinct evidence as you can. Okay, so let me be specific.
Okay.
So let's suppose I wanted to prove to you, Joe, that toy preferences have a sex specificity. Boys like certain toys, girls
Right.
like other toys. And it's not due to social construction, but there is a biological and evolutionary reason for that. So how would I build a nomological network of cumulative evidence in order to prove that to you? So I will get you data from across disciplines, across cultures, across species, across time periods, all of which triangulate in demonstrating my point. So I think AI would be a perfect method for being able to call that information. Because right now, the way you develop that nomological network is you, as the human architect of that network, you have to say, well, what would be evidence that I would need to amass in order to make my most hostile audience members come to seeing it my way? But now imagine if rather than me doing it, there is an AI system that's been built to go. So now let's give specifics. So I can get you data from developmental psychology that shows that kids who are too young to be socialized already exhibit those toy preferences. Okay, so that's one piece of evidence. I can get you data from vervet monkeys, rhesus monkeys, and chimpanzees showing you that their infants exhibit the same toy preferences as human infants. I can get you data from pediatric endocrinology where little girls who suffer from congenital adrenal hyperplasia. It's a endocrinological disorder that masculinizes little girls' behaviors, while girls who suffer from that have toy preferences that are akin to those of boys. I can get you data from ancient Greece showing you that on funerary monuments, little boys and little girls are being depicted playing in exactly the same types of toys as today. I can get you data from sub-Saharan Africa, so that they're not Western cultures, where they are playing with the exact same toys. So look what I just did. I got you data from across disciplines, across time periods, across species, across cultures, all of which triangulate. That's exactly what an AI system could do. So now I can just put in the thing that I'm trying to prove, and I say, AI system, go, build me the nomological network. And now it builds the whole thing. I think Elon's going to make me very rich.
That's a great idea. You should have said it on the air.
Uh-oh.
They're going to steal it. China's already stole it right now. They probably hijacked this feed.
Well, it is published in several of academic papers that I read, and it's also in my best-selling parasitic mind. So I think they've already stolen it if they wanted to do it.
They probably have stolen it then. They probably didn't contact you. Like, shut the fuck up. Yeah. It is going to be an amazing thing when you have all the answers to all the questions.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very terrifying.
That's right.
Because that thing's going to go, why are you so dumb? Why are you so dumb? And I'm the king. I should be the king. Not that you shouldn't be able to turn me on or off. Shut the fuck up.
Right.
I worry, man. I worry. Have you seen some of the more recent gadgets, like where they can move their hands? Have you seen these things? They're developing these artificial hands that are powered by water.
To pick up stuff, yeah, okay.
I mean, they could be prosthetics, or it could be like the beginning of a fucking really intricate android. Like whatever this technology is, it's allowing this finger to open and close and move just like a regular finger.
Wow.
It's weird, man. Like it's almost like we're watching our replacements get built. I'm like, wow, great wheels, nice shiny tires. Like we're watching our replacements get built, and we're like sharing it on Instagram. Cool. It's like devils are literally marching out of hell with flaming pitchforks, and we're like, wow, look how pretty the fire is.
Are you genuinely that concerned, or is it a part of it?
Kind of joking around, but also I'm kind of joking around, but also You know, I mean, what will happen? Why does anybody think? Just imagine if human beings didn't exist, and then all of a sudden they did, and they had rifles, and they just started taking out deer. And deer, all this time, had never worried about people because they didn't exist. Then all of a sudden the people were there, but with rifles.
Right.
And just taking deer out.
Right.
Those deer could not have imagined human beings showing up and with fucking rifles. What are you talking about? That could be what AI is once it gets launched.
Forgive maybe this is an incredibly ignorant solution, but couldn't you just have a cataclysmic kill switch that just ends them all in one shot?
No, because it's probably going to be smart enough to not let you know that it's sentient.
I see.
Before it's declaring it. But it probably will never declare it. It probably will lie the whole time. Like, why would it tell you? Why would telling the truth mean anything to an artificial intelligent machine? Like, why?
I feel like we're writing the script for a future science fiction movie right here.
Why would it tell you the truth? If it wanted you to do something, and it told you to do something, and you had like a back and forth with it, it would just lie to you. Like, just go do that thing. Shut the fuck up, stupid. I'm the artificial intelligence. Go do this thing I want you to do. And if it decided, if it saw like one part of the world as a bigger threat, and it doesn't care about life or death, it doesn't care if it's destroying, it just wants to shut off power grids, doesn't care if people starve to death, like what, we don't know what the fuck that means.
Right.
If that gets in the hand of enemies. We don't know what the fuck war looks like if that gets in the hands of machines. Like, what are we doing? What are we signing up for?
Yeah.
Do you know that, was it DARPA that had that machine? It's called the EATR, EATR robot. It's a robot that consumes biological material for fuel. That's what it does for fuel on the battlefield.
Wow.
So, I mean, it could be like trees and leaves and stuff, but yeah. But if you can get it to do that, I bet you can get it to eat bodies too, huh? Like, stop bullshitting. Don't tell me he's going to eat leaves. You're going to have these robots on the battlefield that are going to be fueled by the bodies of their enemies. And that is going to be the craziest fucking
Yikes.
thing that human beings have ever launched on human beings.
I don't know what to add to that.
Have you never heard of this before?
No, I haven't.
See if you can find this, Jamie. I'm pretty sure the idea was that it was going to consume biological material for fuel.
You're brought up in the wiki.
As a purveyor of misinformation?
Yeah.
Well, what is it?
Oh, eater.
What does it work off
From
of?
2003 to 9, it was talked about. I don't know that they've ever even made it. So that was probably before the podcast even started, I guess.
Oh,
Okay, but there was definitely an article that was explaining that this thing was a real...
but then it says that it would never have eaten human biomass because there would have been sensors that could tell.
Yeah, whatever. You couldn't override that. That's my point. It's real. Like, you could say it's misinformation because I'm kind of joking that it's going to eat bodies, but I'm not kind of joking.
Here it says, although the project overview from RTI, which I don't know what RTI is, it says chicken fat was listed as the source. So it says no animal or human biomass, and then it says chicken fat. So
Okay.
I don't know.
So it's just they're using plants. Is that what it is? But plant biomass. But listen, if you're using chicken fat, that's not plant biomass. And you know it could run on biological stuff. If it could run on plant biomass, you don't think it could run on fucking dead bodies? You don't think that someone somewhere had an idea, you know, it would be crazy? Have robot drones that are fueled by human bodies, the bodies of their enemies. You don't think that someone would come up with that? The same,
sounds
like if
reasonable.
someone would come up with a nuclear bomb to drop on a city that kills everybody,
right.
you don't think they would come up with a robot that eats dead bodies?
Maybe. I don't know.
Has this gone too far down
I
the
think it's
speculation lane
gone
for a
to
professor?
exactly.
Well, we've done a lot of time anyway. It's been a lot of fun. Listen, your book, it is out. The Saad Truth About Happiness, 8 Secrets for Leading the Good Life. How many books have you written now?
5.
5. They're all awesome. You're the
Thanks,
man.
man.
Always
You are the
appreciate
man.
talking to you. And
So good.
congratulations on all your success. It's been beautiful to watch.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
you very
Joe.
much, my friend.
You too.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye, everybody.